All right, we are here with the Erika versus G-Man after show. I'm the Dapper Dinosaur. Unfortunately, G-Man isn't going to be joining us. I guess he had to go to sleep or something. Maybe he has work in the morning. I don't know. But we are joined so far by Benthoven, Erika, the Gustick Gibbon, and RJ Downard. And we may or may not be joined by Nephi soon. He has the link. If any of you are in contact with him, please let him know that he has the join link at his IamNephilimFree@gmail.com email. So there you go. So I guess the first thing I would like to say is, Erika, how do you feel about the debate?
Oh, you know what? I always have a good time with those kinds of things. My question always ends up being with, and I wouldn't say anything here that I wouldn't say to G-Man to his face, which is that I don't know. I feel like he asked a question, right, and then I would explain it, but then either the goalposts shift and it's no longer a good enough answer because we've reached that point, right, or the subject gets changed, which is what I said to him at the end of the debate. I was like, look, I feel like I've answered your question. It's just that I guess that's not what you wanted to hear, or you disagree fundamentally on the answer itself. In which case, why ask the question? You know.
Yeah, I find that's a fairly common thing with anti-evolutionists. There's a lot of goalpost shifting. And I think the reason for that is ultimately, if they weren't to shift goalposts, they would realize that their objections would simply be answered. But I do want to get a quick reactions now before we start really diving into this. So this is, like 2 or 3 sentences that aren't like 8 or 9 clauses. We'll give you 3 clauses max per sentence, 3 sentences. RJ, what was your first impression, or what's your initial reaction to the debate?
I loved Erika's presentation. It was rapid fire. The fact that G-Man started off with a lot of boilerplate stuff boded very badly.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. And look, really, I'm not here to bash G-Man. There's a fair chance that G-Man will end up watching this. And G-Man, I'm not trying to be mean to you. You know that you and I are not going to be in agreement over things, and so I'm not going to not talk about that. But I'm really not here to say, oh, terrible G-Man. But Benthoven.
Yeah, I'd say he was terribly charming.
Yeah, actually, G-Man,
he was most agreeable.
I was dying of laughter at G-Man talking about the dragoons.
That was fun.
Funniest thing. I was like, G-Man's got like, I couldn't figure out what the consensus.
They're soldiers,
So wait, I couldn't figure out the end if the name Dragoons, the fan name Dragoons, comes from the YouTuber or if it comes from G-Man calling them Dragoons. And I think the latter is way funnier.
I think it's the latter, but I'm not sure. But let's get Benthoven's initial reaction.
I was expecting more yelling from G-Man. I'm glad it was really a friendly debate, and pretty interesting to hear Erika use science and G-Man get confused.
Yeah, basically. But yeah, so that I am hoping that we get Nephilim Free in here. Anyone, I'm being serious. I would like to have we got GTV. G-Man, are you actually here? I can't hear you, G-Man. Are you here?
Yeah, it's me.
Oh, G-Man's here. I thought you weren't coming. All right. Well, first, G-Man, I have a real quick super chat, and then I'm going to ask you the same question I asked everyone else. So we had a $2 super chat from Ryan Stevens. Thank you for your super chat. Who said G-Man had a good/decent debate. Not joking. G-Man, you can respond to that if you want. It's a nice complimentary super chat.
Can you see me first and foremost?
I cannot. I think your camera is off.
Okay. So let me do this here. This is StreamYard, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
That's a nice picture, man.
Yeah.
I like that picture.
Okay, thanks.
You got that nice pose going. I like it. That's good.
Yeah, that's a good avatar. That's a good one.
You should use that more widely. I like that one. But so G-Man, I asked everyone else who was here already what their first impressions was, and I said, in about 3 sentences or so. So in 3 sentences or so, what was your initial reaction to the debate?
I wasn't disappointed. I knew Erika was gonna bring up a lot of good points. At the same time, though, I had a feeling we wasn't going to be able to touch on everything because, again, I didn't have my notes.
Okay. And also, we have a $1.99 super chat from Eric Virtaler 92, friend of the channel, by the way. I think I have some video. Yeah, I definitely have some live streams I've done with Eric, and you can go subscribe to Eric. He needs more. He deserves more subscribers. Anyway, he says, at Erika, does the Bible teach a flat Earth?
You know, I've heard alternative perspectives on that. When I had a conversation, you know, many people know this about me. I bring it up quite frequently because it tends to be relevant. But I used to have a young Earth creationist coworker, and we would go out once a month, sometimes twice, and get coffee and discuss, you know, science, and he would discuss theology. And again, as someone untrained in that, I would do my best. But when he brought that up, you know, because we were having a conversation, and he had said something along the lines of, well, the Bible is scientifically accurate on everything. And I said, but doesn't, you know, I could have sworn, and Gman, maybe you can weigh in on this because this is theology. But he was saying, yes, you know, I believe it's in Isaiah 50 something, that the Bible is referred to as, you know, like a circle. And I was like, that's really interesting, though, because I looked into it. I looked into the hermeneutics as best as I could. And what I seem to get is that there is a word for sphere, and that circle seemed to suggest the traditional Hebrew idea that at least pops up, that you've got sort of a flat disc with the pillars of the earth underneath, and then Sheol is in the middle, and then you've got the firmament around the top. So my argument to him was, I don't know how you can necessarily make this a globe, because I feel like they could have used, there is another Hebrew word for sphere or globe that they could have used but didn't. So, you know, maybe they mention it elsewhere. I don't know if that necessarily means a flat earth spot. I'm a very big fan of sort of the John Walton interpretation of looking at sort of the Pentateuch as under the same lens as the other ancient Near Eastern texts, or at least influenced by that culture, which would mean kind of thinking of the earth as being a flat plane with a circular flat plane, of course, but with a dome over the top of it, isn't really out of the ordinary. It seems to kind of mesh up. But G-Man, by all means, weigh in.
Yeah, we're going to go to G-Man for a response, and then I'm going to read a super chat. So G-Man, what do you got on the question of, does the Bible teach a flat earth?
The short answer is no, and the long answer is no. The Bible don't teach no flat earth. I think that, okay, so I'm probably going to alienate some of my friends when I say this because they're flat earthers, but I don't believe that the Bible supports it or anything like that. I think that some people are taking the Bible out of context with some Bible verses and using it to support their flat earth beliefs. I don't believe science backs it up. As a matter of fact, a lot of times, unfortunately, when you're talking to a flat earther, they will discontinue science altogether in order to have their flat earth beliefs. Like some of them will say there's no such thing as gravity. You know what I mean? Like they lose me when they say stuff like that. Some of them will say things like will say that the earth is on pillars, right? It's on 4 pillars. Really? So what are the pillars on? You understand what I'm saying? And then you ask them, show me in the Bible where it says that, you know, that the earth has an edge, and then I ask them to explain that to me scientifically, and then you'll start getting the whole, you know, science isn't biblical and all this other stuff and whatnot. So I don't support the Bible. I don't support people who claim that the Bible teaches that the earth is flat, because they can't prove it, and they know they can't.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna.
I just want to say this is really why I want G-Man to debate Nathan Thompson, because I would love to root for G-Man to win a debate where I agree with him that the earth is round, and that would just be the greatest debate ever to watch.
I would have fun with that too. I would really enjoy it, but I understand, G-Man, why you might not want to. I just want to give my quick thoughts on the Bible flat earth. Read the super chat. Sorry, apparently my brain has turned off today. I don't know. Whatever. But my thing is, it
ain't just your brain, trust me. My brain's off today.
We've all been there.
Yeah. So yeah. I go with, I don't think the Bible intends to teach about the shape of the earth. Like, I don't think that was the goal of any of the writers of the Bible, to tell you what the shape of the earth is. I do, however, think that there are some indications in the Bible that the writers thought it was flat, but they didn't want to, that wasn't ever their topic. And I understand the arguments against, and it's not a strong opinion of mine. It's just sort of the impression I get. And I'm willing to go either way on it. But our super chat is, Eric is from, it's for 50 Danish krona. And I had to look up that currency, by the way, because I was not familiar with the abbreviation. And it is from Z Leaping Bear. And he says, or she, I don't know, actually. It's a bear, so we'll go with it. I guess maybe, I don't know. I'm a dinosaur. I go by he. this person says, Erika got my point about seeing creation. While neither evolution or the Bible can see it directly, evolution has more corroborating. Maybe he means corroborating. I think corroborating evidence. Bible has more problems. And actually, we haven't heard from RJ. So, RJ, what do you think? Does which one has more?
Oh yeah, I've been wanting to jump in. How am I on audio? I turned the camera back on and shut down everything else.
You're pretty good. There was a tiny bit of roboting, but not very
Okay,
much.
good. If I start roboting, I'll turn the camera off.
Okay.
The scholars of biblical writing all pretty much agree that the biblical cosmology was geocentrist, and flat Earth was still being pushed by Cosmos Indiplustes into the 2nd or 3rd century, as I recall. By that time, Hush had adopted Aristotelian science, which had a globular Earth, and so this was now the trendy thing being incorporated into Hugh Ross's cosmology in the 20th century. That standard model, and they remain geocentrist, as we know. And geocentrism is just as wrong as flat Earth, and yet they were still dealing with that. I'll agree with you, Dapper, though, that the shape of the Earth, the age of the Earth, these were not hot button issues in the early church, or for that matter, into Judaic thinking. It just didn't bother them. They kind of, Earth was recent, and they didn't think in terms of millions of years or anything else. But the shape of it, it was flat Earth geocentrist, then became just geocentrist.
Yeah. In fact, there's actually a fairly famous quote from, I believe it's Thomas Aquinas, where he's basically complaining about people who are saying that the Bible says these things that are obviously false and that they should shut up about it because the Bible is not here to teach us about astronomy or, like geography or any of these things. And that if you're trying to use it as your source for these things, you're probably going to go off base. But then again, I mean, I understand the theological position that says that the Bible has to get these things right or why trust it. So
I actually have a question for G-Man, sort of on a theological standpoint. Are you still there, G-Man?
Yeah, I'm here.
Is G-Cat there too?
Yeah, the hat's here too, yeah.
Okay, good.
Oh, the cat. You mean my cat? No, the cat's not.
Oh, dang. My cat is in the room right now, but he is not the Gustick cat. His name's Jude. Anyways, I was going to ask you, so one of the things that I've read from mostly theistic evolutionists, and as I told you earlier, I used to be quite a staunch theistic evolutionist. What are your thoughts on the fact that the Bible doesn't seem to reveal new science to kind of the people that God is speaking to, right? He's kind of working on their level, it seems. He doesn't upgrade them, sort of, like even when they were doing things that were quite odd.
Could you repeat the latter part of what you said? Because I don't know, my computer cut out with that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was asking what your thoughts are on the fact that God doesn't seem to update the knowledge of anybody in the ancient Hebrew Bible, essentially. Like he's not coming down and being like, hey, here's how you crossbreed plants so that you have better crops. Or he's not saying.
Are you talking about in Genesis?
Yeah, like why doesn't or any part of the Pentateuch? Like, I think it's kind of relevant because it's like if let's say Dapper Dinosaur and RJ are indeed correct, and the Bible does not necessarily teach a flat Earth, right? But that the individuals who wrote it thought the Earth was flat. That would kind of fall in line, right? Because then God's not necessarily upgrading their knowledge, right? He's not coming down and saying, "Hey, listen, FYI, the Earth is round, and also it circles the sun," and sort of things of this nature.
Well, the Bible's not a science book.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, the Bible's not a science book to do those kind of things, if I understand your question correctly. And then two,
no, that's
and then two, I mean, okay, obviously God knows everything according to us Christians, so He can't necessarily speak to us. I guess from His level, because we don't have the understanding that He has. He has to dumb it down for us to understand certain things, right? He'll use analogies. He'll use various different ways to explain things to us, right? He does update the information. I'm just trying to understand, like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, sorry, RJ.
Are you trying to say, like, how to make?
Yeah, I just want to ask God isn't clever enough to be better than any human teacher? Because I know a lot of human teachers who are perfectly capable of explaining complex scientific phenomenon to even grade schoolers, and yet somehow God couldn't do that.
That's not what I'm saying, and I don't think that's what Erika is saying. I'm trying to understand the question a little better.
Yeah, I'm saying, I'm sort of, let me try to clarify. So basically what I'm asking is that, like, I don't think, even from a perspective of, like, even from your perspective, let's say, G-Man, that you're incorrect and the Bible does teach a flat earth. Or not necessarily teach, but it sort of absolves the thought that there is one. I don't think, like, I think you're correct. I don't think that it's necessarily relevant because it's not a science book, right? So my sort of lead in with that is from sort of a theistic evolutionist perspective. Why would that not be the same for creation, right? Like, why wouldn't it be the same that the Hebrew is similar to understanding the world as a flat world and God not saying, hey, by the way, it's actually round, that God kind of came down to their level and was like, I created everything. Here's how I did.
Well, I believe that God did tell us that the earth was round. I don't have the scriptures in front of me. Like I said, I've debated a flat earther friend of mine on this particular topic. And I had to show him, I said, look, you're not interpreting these scriptures correctly. And again, there's something called the Flat Earth Society that existed long before people started doing what they were doing today. And when I first got into the great debate community, there was atheists that was accusing Christians of believing the earth was flat, and I argued against it. And then I guess recently a lot of Christians started buying into the flat earth argument again. But as far as I'm concerned, there are scriptures in the Bible that teach that the earth is round. I argued before that when I look up in the sky and I see the moon, and some of them will tell you that the moon don't necessarily rotate or whatever. You know what I mean? It doesn't spin on its own axis or whatever. Things like that. The telescope will tell you that those things are happening. That's why I don't like talking about this, because it's like me talking about, like, you know, I ain't trying to be disrespectful to anybody who's a flat earther or whatever, but honestly, I don't even think it's worth a debate topic, to be honest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got
you. From a Bible perspective, ain't nobody convincing me that the Bible teaches that the earth is flat. Nobody, you can't name a YouTuber on here that's going to be able to convince me that the Bible teaches that the earth is flat. And just you can't do that. And then when I ask you scientific questions, you say, "Oh, science is trash."
How about geocentrism?
You can't do that.
Sorry, RJ, you might want to repeat yourself there.
How about geocentrism? There are very prominent geocentrists today. Malcolm Bowden over in England, Tom Willis, who wrote the Kansas Intelligent Design Standards, and they're all coming out of a biblical framework. And they think they have the science on their side to boot. Kent Hovind criticizes them, and AIG does, but they think they're right too.
Your name is RJD. That's why I can call you RJ, or?
Those are my initials. Just call me Jim. Hey, you.
Okay. Yeah,
RJ.
okay,
any of those.
But can he call you Bubba?
So Jim, are you a flat earther?
You can call me Jenny, or you can call me JJ. That's an old routine.
All right. Are you a flat earther?
No.
RJ. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, Jay, are you a flat earther?
No, he said no.
A normal science-loving evolutionist. Earth 4 billion years old, universe 13 billion.
Yeah, I don't believe the earth is flat.
You know what? We found an excellent point that we all agree on.
Wait, I don't know. Beethoven, are you a flat earther? Come on. Come clean, Ben.
I saw a Vsauce video, and then it's something like a cosmic ray traveling close to the speed of light, the Earth will be flat from its.
Oh, that's a good point.
Since I'm not flat
Wow.
fast, no, the Earth is not flat.
All right.
I'm not. Well, it will be really. It will be a theoretical, but everyone on it will still think the Earth is a sphere.
Yeah,
right.
And actually, we have an interesting question, and I think it's interesting because it ties into my things that I find interesting. But we have a question from a super chat from David Baldock. Thank you very much for your super chat for $1.99 US. And he says, "G-Man, is Microraptor a bird or a dinosaur?" And I'm not sure if you're familiar enough with Microraptor. Yeah, do you know enough about Microraptor?
No, what's a Microraptor?
If you have access to a computer, you might just want to pull up a picture because there's some good pull up a picture of the fossil.
I'm going to try and find a picture of the fossil and share it on
They're critters with feathers on all four limbs. They have winged legs as well as winged arms.
Look at
Trying to get it.
They're the better
a
half
nice-
of Archaeoraptor.
it's true.
Oh, that's mean.
It's
Well, you want to know if this is a bird? You want to know if
100%
this is a bird or a dinosaur?
Yes, that was the super chat. And actually, I'm going to
What
share
is it?
the screen real quick.
It looks like a prehistoric bird.
So you're going to go with it is a bird and it's not a dinosaur, and that's currently I have that up right there is a picture of Archaeoraptor. So
Yeah, it looks like a prehistoric bird.
okay.
Well, so that's a fossil of a dead bird.
Now I have a question about this though. I have a follow up question. Do you think you've seen Jurassic Park, right?
No, I've never actually watched it from beginning to end.
He-Man.
But wait, you've seen some of it.
I
Though.
watched it
Oh, it's a good movie.
It is a good movie. Actually, I
You
even have
is.
complaints about it.
Objects in mirror are closer than they appear.
Actually, G-Man, quick question, Dapper D. I'm genuinely very curious because someone, I was watching a debate on Modern Day Debate a while back. I think Darth Dawkins was in it, but he rage quit the debate, and then someone in the super chat asked what his favorite comedy was, and I was like, dang, I really wanted to know what Darth Dawkins' favorite comedy was. So, G-Man, if you haven't seen Jurassic Park, because I do think it's a very good movie, what is your favorite movie? I'm genuinely just very curious. And then, sorry, Dapper D, you can take
my favorite movie? The Breakfast Club.
The Breakfast Club?
Okay, that's a good answer.
Yeah,
I like
Yeah,
that
that's a good pick. That's a good pick.
No, you know what? I'll be honest. I didn't think that I would have this much agreement with G-Man, and I really like that I do. I think, we might have some disagreements on some scientific matters, but G-Man seems like the kind of guy who has some good taste in movies, and, but the Jurassic Park thing, do you remember the Velociraptors from what you have seen?
No.
Okay.
Running away from some dinosaurs.
So
That's the whole movie.
I'll try to pull up a Velociraptor skeleton.
I'm really picky when it comes to my movies.
And while you're pulling that up, I'll just point out that Nova did a really good show about the flight characteristics of Microraptors, a material from the people from the Museum of Natural History in New York versus the ones at the Smithsonian store, that gets into all the grisly details of the fossils and how they work out the flight and gliding characteristics and all of that stuff. And if you can find it online, it's excellent. I think it was like a couple years ago that came out.
Yeah.
All right, so G-Man, this right here that you can see in the watch window, this is a Velociraptor skeleton. Is this a bird or a dinosaur?
I can't tell. It's a bunch of bones. It might be a dinosaur. I don't think it's a bird. It looks like a dinosaur.
Okay, but the problem then is that if you take a look at just the bones in Microraptor, which is this guy here, they are virtually identical.
Well, I'll have to look at that in my free time to be able to.
Okay. And that's fair. I mean, we don't all have.
To be fair, all anti-evolutionists have problems with that identification systematics thing.
Yeah, that's.
I think I understand this room now. Erika is the smart one. RJ is the snarky one. Bent is the moderator, and I guess Daper is the sneaky one. So I understand. I mean, let's keep it real here for.
That was based on the super chat, G-Man. I wouldn't have asked if it hadn't been for the super chat. I'm not trying to be sneaky. Well, I'm being a little sneaky.
No, it's okay. It's okay because eventually you're going to ask me a question, and then I'm going to give a snarky answer to. So it's all right.
Oh, hey, you can be snarky here. I'm rarely snarky in live hangouts against people who are being nice.
I think
I'm a bit more snarky in my videos.
I think the thing I've learned about G-Man is that half the battle with G-Man is you just gotta have a good sense of humor about it. He's sassy. You gotta just sass back, huh, G-Man?
Yeah, you sure do. Only if you can do that, you'll be all right.
Absolutely.
I just gotta say though, I really like this little reconstruction here, and I kind of want to find the website it's hosted on, and I might want it.
Oh, like 3D print it? That'd be cool.
Yeah. Well, I don't. It would be tricky to 3D print.
Let me call
Have to update
attention to those little. And let me call attention to those little gastralia bones that are running along the bottom of its body towards the pelvis. Those are some of the interesting little bones that are showing up in the and gradually disappear as you move into the Cretaceous birds.
So,
yep. I'd also like to point out the furcula between the coracoids and the scapulas.
So I think Dapper D, you'll like
that
this
for
question.
Years, creationists insisted they didn't have.
Hold on, Erika was in the middle of something. Let's let Erika finish.
Okay. Yeah, it's okay. I think that this is kind of an interesting merge of the topic and of Jurassic Park that I would like to get. Do we lose G-Man?
Oh, sorry. No, that was me accidentally hitting G-Man instead of my screen. I'm sorry about that, G-Man.
Yeah, because my question was for G-Man.
That was all on me, and I sincerely apologize to G-Man. That was not intentional.
Yeah, so there's this really, G-Man, do you know about the Chickenosaurus?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, so there's this really interesting kind of, it's almost a meme at this point, right? But the idea is that there are enough genes sort of in the genome of a common chicken that you could get it to look very, very similar to many of the theropods that are like dinosaurs, like tyrannosaurs and raptors and things of this nature. If you were to kind of play around with those genes and turn them off and on. And if I remember correctly, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they've done it certainly with teeth, right? Where they've turned some genes off and on in the area.
They've done it with they've done it with teeth. They've done it with the snout. Buller's work. I cited it in the books and all that. Bhullar, I think his name is spelled. He's on Twitter, by the way, too. And of the tibias, the limb bones, they've done a paleogenomics work there, retroengineering it. But yeah, in principle, presumably the very stem group of theropods, you should be able to theoretically retroengineer all of that from present birds.
Right. Yeah. So G-Man, basically the situation is that if you go around and tinker in the genome of a modern chicken, you can kind of give it some very dinosaur-y traits, right? So like you can play around with the embryology with regard to like the beak and the skull, and you can get it to look pretty close to like a raptor, right? Which I wanted to get your thoughts on that, because I think some creationists I've talked to are cool with birds having evolved within the dinosaur kind, right? But some of them aren't. So what do you think about that?
I don't have a definite opinion about it, to be honest.
Okay. Do you think it would be cool?
I've heard other people talk about it in their taxonomic classification, but I don't have a definite opinion about it. One of the things about me and these fossils is once you present something to me, I'm going to look at it and then I'm going to get back to you in terms of like
you're a visual guy, right?
I'm a what?
Like a visual guy. Like you like to.
Yeah, I'm a visual guy. Yeah.
Okay.
Fair enough.
And actually, we have a related super chat. Although I think this may be something you're not familiar with. It's not something a lot of people know about. But Z Leaping Bear for 20 Danish krona asks, "What is the stink bird then?" And I believe he's directing that at G-Man as a follow-up to the Microraptor question. And the stink bird is also known as the Hoatzin, or Hoatzin, depending on who you're talking to. Do you know what that bird is?
Oh, the Hoatzin. Oh, yeah.
Why don't you show a picture of the bird?
I will find one. Give me just a second.
In the meantime, so the interesting thing about this bird, G-Man, is that some of the chicks, right? I believe it's just the chicks. Maybe the adults retain it, but they essentially have claw-tipped wings, which is a trait that many modern birds don't kind of retain from, at least from an evolutionary perspective, from their more theropod ancestors. But interestingly enough, I've seen some interesting stuff back and forth on this. Like Answers in Genesis will use the Hoatzin or the stink bird as an example of saying, well, this is why birds have so much in common with theropods, because they're similarly designed. But other people will say, well, no, actually, on the other hand, that's more evidence that like Archaeopteryx is just a regular old bird, right?
So this is a juvenile Hoatzin, and over on the right, you can just sort of make out that it has two claws on its wing. It has a digit 2 claw and a digit 1 claw. And it's actually using one of the claws on the left wing. Well, when I say left, I mean my left. It's right wing, but it's also using one of those claws to grip onto that branch there. Mm-hmm. And it's actually not unique in having claws, although it is very unusual for any bird to have a digit 2 claw. Most birds that have claws, like swans, have only a digit 1 claw.
I didn't know that.
But yeah, actually, ducks have little tiny thumb claws. Chickens do too.
That's horrifying, by the way.
Yeah, actually, geese slash with their thumb claws sometimes. If you get into a fight with a goose, it will slash you with its claw.
I don't like that.
No, I don't either. But
as far as I know from the
So let me ask you guys
probably a convergent feature rather than vestigial.
We're getting too much talk over. So I want to get G-Man's response to this and his question, and then I want RJ to go. So G-Man,
I don't have a response to that, but
okay,
I do have a question though.
Yeah.
And my question is that Erika said that she used to be a staunch theistic evolutionist, right?
Yeah.
Why are you no longer a theistic evolutionist? I mean, you know, I've spoken to theistic evolutionists before, and they have very similar beliefs like you regarding evolution. Why did you stop being a theistic evolutionist?
You know, honestly, for me, and I'm not necessarily totally out of that. I'm mostly in kind of a weird limbo right now with as far as my spiritual or lack thereof positions. But with regard to that, a lot of it had to do with kind of looking into like cultural anthropology. Like I thought it was, I read a lot of John Walton's work, which again, I would also recommend his work to you, G-Man, because he's a pretty big theistic evolutionist, and he offers some very interesting takes on Genesis. We like John Walton. Me and Dapper like John Walton. And, but yeah, I think for me, it was when I started looking at the Old Testament, and I know we might get into it on this just because this is more of an opinion than anything else, but it started feeling a little bit like stuff that modern people use to justify their actions, but instead of using, say, nationalism or something like that, like with the Nazis, it was doing things that you wanted to do in the name of God. And it just seemed like humans doing human things, but with a spiritual justification. Because I found it very hard to cope with some of the stuff in like Numbers, where, you know, allegedly you've got God commanding a group of Israelites to like slaughter the Canaanites, and then it's like there's a lot of weird stuff with taking, you know, women as sort of prizes, or young women. Sometimes it's interpreted as young girls, and I found that kind of disturbing, I guess. More
That's
so.
I've heard that before. That's pretty common.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I didn't hear you.
I'm saying that that's common. I hear that a lot.
Yeah, and so I started reading kind of from that perspective, and I was like, you know, this feels quite a bit like a history book. Like I think that the Bible does have a lot of interesting chronology, and quite a bit of it some of it can be reconciled with literal history, right? I think when you get into some things like Exodus, there's a little bit of strange overlap there, because I had to take Egyptology as a part of my anthropology minor, and my professor was a staunch Catholic, and she actually had been really big on the Amarna Project. So there's this really ancient city in Egypt that was ruled by Akhenaten, who was like the only monotheistic Egyptian pharaoh. Of course, the monotheism was towards the sun, but he was technically monotheistic, at least in the definition sense. And she told us when we were having a conversation, she was like, yeah, listen, you know, because we had a lot of religious people in the class, and they were like, well, you know, what do we know about Exodus? Like, is that something that happened? And she was like, if it did happen, it would have had to been on a much smaller scale, and it would have had to have been rather than slaves with corvée laborers, because the Egyptians never had like legitimate slaves. They were usually like indebted taxpayers called corvée laborers. And so when I heard that, I was like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I said, that's what they told you, that they never had slaves and that they had taxpayers?
Well, it was indebted taxpayers. Like if you can't pay your taxes, then you're considered a corvée laborer, and you have to work for basically you can either work off your taxes or you get killed. But I started thinking on that, and I was like, well, you know, maybe it is the case that culturally Exodus is something that occurred but was greatly exaggerated, because very similar to the Babylonian captivity, the Hebrews were kind of known for retaking their culture through storytelling. At least that's what, in some of the extra biblical sources, that's something that we see sometimes. And again, I'm not an expert on this. This is just what I've read. And so I thought, well, how far does that go?
I really wish we would have talked about this one modern day debate.
Yeah, I'm sure you have a lot to say.
I really wish we would have got into this modern day debate. Oh, Lord.
Yeah, I'm sure you've got a lot to say, you know, I mean, and I would be interested to hear your thoughts. But the long and short of it is that a lot of it seemed like typical human stuff and trying to use God to justify human stuff. And then also I kind of started thinking, well, you know, if Exodus is greatly exaggerated, or is potentially greatly exaggerated, how do we parse out what's meant to be taken literally and what's not? That's basically it. That's basically the
all right. Okay. So as far as all that goes, I'm gonna choose to be a good G-man today. I'm not really gonna go into some of the things that your professor told you regarding like.
And thank you for going.
Instead, I'm going to stick to the theistic evolution thing. Obviously, many of the theistic evolutionists believe that everything that has happened has a cause. You know what I mean? And that some of them believe that, well, most theistic evolutionists believe that God either set everything into motion. I think that's more of a deist thing. They call it theistic evolution. But I think a lot of them will claim that God is the one that is guiding the selection process. It ain't natural selection. It's God's guiding the process to determine what's going to be what. You know what I mean? So the morality that's involved in what God told Israel to do has nothing to do with whether or not he guided the selection or whatever. That's why I was curious, because I see a lot of people go into the morality thing. Morality has nothing to do at all with whether or not God guided the process or not. So my question for you is this: why did you choose natural selection over God God guiding evolution?
Because and then I'd love to let everybody else chime in as well, because I'm monopolizing.
You got to answer it if you don't. You can answer it tomorrow if you want, or another day.
Yeah, no, I can answer it now. It's a brief answer. Even when I was a staunch theistic evolutionist, I was never of the opinion that God was intricately involved in every little decision that involved natural selection. I actually thought of it more from a perspective of similar to how the laws of physics and the laws of chemistry are set into place, that evolution was simply the same thing for much of biology, that it's more of a mechanism than anything else. So I kind of thought of it from a perspective of like, well, it's more like what's more, to me, I thought of it this way. What's more intelligent? Creating a Rube Goldberg machine, right, that handles every single little step along the way and is essentially a perfect mechanism for maintaining life, or having to go out there and intricately interact in every single step. And to me, I found it more convincing that it would be a mechanism put into place, just like how God wouldn't be involved in every chemical reaction or, gravity when I drop my pencil on the floor. So to me,
that's a fair answer. That's a fair answer.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to gain a little knowledge on you because I hear some people before they become a full-blown like skeptic or whatever, you know what I mean? They talk about the things that took them out of like theistic evolution or whatever. I am not a supporter of theistic evolution, believe it or not. I'm not a supporter of theistic evolution. I'm not a supporter of deism. I am a staunch creationist, but it is interesting in hearing your story, because I'm still trying to understand you a little better.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
And the other people that are here.
Yeah, I try to be an open book, but the thing is that I'm in it like everybody else is. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. I think that if I were to come back to a rather heavy faith, it would certainly be under the lens of the science that I understand. So it would still be theistic evolution. But again, I don't think I know the theology well enough. That would be something that I would have to look into. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to talk about that at some point. That the stuff that you were talking about regarding Egypt is easy, and the other thing about like ordering to kill the men, women, and children in some of these lands or whatever. I can talk about that all day, and I don't want to do that because that's not why I was invited in here. But we can do that someday.
Yeah. I would be very interested to watch that. I think that would be a fun thing. So I have a couple quick things, and then we're going to go to RJ real quick. Because he had a question, and let's see. So first, I want to go to this right here, just to show Erika. Erika, these are duck claws.
That is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
Isn't that great?
That makes me never want to mess with a duck again. Not that I was ever messing with them intentionally.
Yeah, so there you go. You know what, guys? It's not just the Hoatzin that has claws. Yeah, it's a lot of birds, actually. It's a surprising number. Those are
gigantic.
I know. They'll stab you. So the other thing is we have a quick super chat for $2.99 reduce from Ian Chen, who says, just want to say, quote, Erika rocks, quote. Also, he says, love Dapper too. Thank you very much, Ian. We love you too.
Thank you. Very kind.
All right. And then let's see. I want to hear from RJ, and actually I'm going to mute myself because I have to be right back. But RJ, you have to behave while I'm gone. Can you do that for me, RJ?
Darn.
I know.
I'll try. It was
right.
just about the Hoatzin and the little claw bits on there. As far as the last I heard about it, which or older papers, they didn't think it was a vestigial feature that had been handed down from ancient birds, that it was a convergent feature, and those duck claws would be in the same bit. That there was probably, and I don't think there's been any genetic work in detail on it, that sort of thing can pop up relatively frequently in birds, and it's got part of the genetic substrate. It doesn't surprise me that birds have plasticity like that, because everything about their dinosaur ancestors was really plastic. They could drop digits at the drop of a hat. They could get extra vertebrae on a scale that mammals just don't do. They're very monotonous. G-Man was talking about frogs and humans. We're all tetrapods. We have the same bones. That there's really relatively little novelty going on other than our hearts and our metabolism. But the bird bit, yeah, I'm not sure yet on the genetics. Oh, and just so that you don't get left out as well, Erika, I definitely want you to put up the technical literature on those Neanderthal clothes, because I've never heard of that.
Yes.
I don't know that they found any in graves and the like.
No. Let me sort it out, and I will get it to you to the best of my ability. I very much remember having a conversation with my human evolution professor on this. We'll see. I mean, I guess there's always I'll be the first one to say there's always the possibility I could be mistaken, but I feel very certain, because I know for certain that they're buried with quite a few funerary ornaments. It's one.
Oh yeah, lots of that.
Yeah, so it's one of those things too, where not only do we find
there's been papers on their bone structure that is consistent with wearing clothing and shoes and the like. There's information on of their processing of material to make clothing, those sorts of things that they can find and as well as body decorations and all of that. But I had not seen any specifically. You don't get a full-blown preserved clothing until you get down like to Hoatzin the Iceman, and he was freeze-dried. So you had that down in incredible detail. That still is quite a few years back, like 7,000 BC, something like that, before the age of the Earth.
Yes, let me scrounge about. I mean, again, there's always the possibility I can be mistaken, but I'm fairly certain.
Yeah, Collard did a paper from I think 2010 or 2016, which kind of reviewed the presence of various animals that they could have used to make hides and clothing from, and all the necessary critters were not only known to that time frame, but were known in the bones that they find at burial or at living sites of Neanderthal. So that's one of the reviews there. But yeah, I went like, oh, I don't think they've actually found like a burial site where there's little fragments of clothing. That would be neat. Unlikely as all get out, but neat.
The thing
is there a way I can get some? Is there a way I can get one of y'all's email address?
Oh yeah,
because I gotta go.
Absolutely.
Actually,
you know what? I'm gonna type mine in the private chat. G-Man, I don't know if you've used this program before, but there's a private chat. I'm gonna type mine in.
I'll put mine in too.
Okay. I'm gonna take this down right now.
There's mine.
And I want to thank you for the invite. I wanted to come in here to show that I'm a good sport and that I was willing to come in here and talk.
I'm a big fan of at least giving both parties to a debate a chance to get to the hangout. I do not like hangouts that don't offer that. Now, if the other party doesn't want to join, I mean, whatever. But I do want to get to a few super chats. I'm going to take them slightly out of order just because the last one is something that I think will take a little bit longer than the others to address. First, we have a $1.99 US from David Baldock. Erika, would you debate Banana Man in parentheses Ray Comfort?
Ray Comfort. Oh God, I would love to have a conversation with Ray Comfort. I think Ray is a nice guy, at least from what I've seen. I mean, yeah. Also, Kent was very kind with me as well. I mean, I've definitely seen Kent get rowdy before, and he wasn't rowdy with me.
Yeah.
I would love to have a conversation with Ray Comfort, if nothing else, just because it would be really fun to have a conversation with him.
All right. We have a 50 Danish kroner, whatever.
All right, so guys, thank you for the invite. Thank you for the invite. I'll see you guys later, okay?
Sorry, G-Man.
Wait, actually, G-Man, can you answer one quick question then?
All right, cool.
All right, this is for 190. I can't talk. 199 US from Eric Viertaler. Does G-Man believe that ecostones are authentic?
Ecostones. What are ecostones?
ICA. Ecostones.
G-Man.
Okay.
G-Man, those are those. Sorry. Did he just say you had to go?
Oh well, he said he's going to look it up real quick.
Oh, okay. G-Man, those are they're little black stones. Some of them are like this big, but they vary in size, and they have like carvings of 1980s paleo art dinosaurs on them.
Oh, okay. You're talking about the ones I used in the presentation that I used.
Oh, I didn't know you used them. So yeah, do you think those are authentic?
Let me see something here. Hold on. I believe those are. Hold on. I don't know why they're showing me sneakers here.
That's weird. Sometimes Google is a little crazy.
Those stones are made. No. Those stones are made. The whole point of me using the stones there was to show that if you saw stones like stacked up on top of each other, do we assume that nature did that, or do we assume that a human being did that? That's the only reason I even put that there.
Okay, so do you
and that presentation I put together with before the debate because I lost my notes. So.
Do you think that the ecostones though are authentic artifacts, or do you not have an opinion, or what?
Say that again?
Do you think that they are authentic artifacts or more modern forgeries, or do you just not know?
You talking about the stones that I use in my presentation?
It's the ecostones. I can pull up a picture of them real quick. You might not be familiar with these. Kent Hovind uses them a fair bit. I think he's the only creationist left who's doing it, though, that I know of. But I mean,
let me see.
What do I know? Let me find. So here's
they're authentic. You want to know if they're real stones, or you want me to tell you
if they're modern creations or artifacts? I think is the big question. So these are a selection of ecostones. So you can see like there's one that has a sort of weird like dinosaur-ish thing trying to eat a guy. We've got let's see. We've got this sauropod-ish.
Oh, okay. I spelled it wrong. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Can you make them a little bit bigger?
I can try. Give me a second to find one that I can actually expand to any degree. Let's see.
Okay.
It's fairly. All of these images seem to be fairly low quality, but I can make it. Oh, that's wrong. There we go. That's about.
Okay, I found them on my Google. So.
Okay.
I found them on my Google. Let me look at these real quick, and then I'll let you know. Give me a sec.
And sorry to be keeping you. It was a super chat question, so I really wanted to get it asked.
I want to say yes, but like I said, there's so many forgeries out there with some things. Like I would have to look into it. I don't easily come to conclusions about things.
Okay.
So I'm not. You know what I'm going to choose to do? I'm going to choose to go look at these carefully and then get back to you. You're going to ask me this question again. The reason I'm not saying yes definitively now because this is my first time seeing these.
Right.
So I have to look at them and.
Yeah, that's more than I would say. That's a more than fair answer. And also, I just want to give a quick message to you. This isn't a question; it's just a message. It's from Z Leaping Bear for 50 Danish krona, and it says, "G-Man, I've given you some flack. I do disagree with you. I heard bad about you, but this G-Man, quote unquote, has been disproven the worst things. This G-Man, meaning you, has disproven the worst things, and I'm glad. Good debate." So there you go.
Yeah, I enjoyed my debate with Erika. I thought Erika was a lot more prepared than I was, but like I said, I lost my notes, and you know what I mean. Usually, I'm a lot more rougher, but it is what it is. Good job, Erika.
Yeah, I had a great time as well. I know how it is when you got a deadline looming, and then you end up without your notes, which sucks.
Yeah. All right. Well, G-Man, if you have to go,
it is what it is.
Sorry. If you've got to go, that's fine. I really appreciate you coming on. I'm going to be on for at least a little bit. Anyone in the chat who wants to remind Nephi that I sent him a link is welcome to do so because he's also welcome to be here. I know.
I was looking forward to a chat with Nephi.
Well,
I never
maybe he'll be here. I don't know. People who have him on Twitter or whatever. Actually, G-Man, do you have his email or anything?
I have his Skype, but I'm on the wrong computer to do that. Though.
Oh, okay.
That's all right.
Okay, because I was going to say if you wanted to give him a quick message or anything, but you know, hey.
I'll try when I leave.
In a world of social distancing, ain't everybody at home?
Yeah, I know, right? But that's okay. Thanks a lot for coming. It was nice to actually have you here because we were worried that you wouldn't be here. So you have a great night. I know it's late there. What is it, like past midnight where you are?
Yeah, it's 12:22 a.m. over here. But
right,
you earned a second visit from me because I thought I was going to come over here and go through the typical trollish behavior of these YouTubers. So.
Oh no,
I'm here again.
Were you pleasantly surprised, G-Man?
Oh yes, I actually met some nice people that disagree with me. That's awesome.
Yeah,
you know
well,
I knew you'd have a good time.
Dapper is a very polite theropod.
Thank you very much.
Please debate Nathan Thompson so I can agree with you.
Right, that I would love that, but I understand why you might not want to. But you know what? Let's stop keeping G-Man from going to sleep. G-Man has to get his beauty rest because pictures like that little profile picture don't happen on accident there.
Oh, they sure don't. No, they sure don't.
So
anyway, guys, good night.
Good night, G-Man. Thanks for coming.
All right, no problem.
All right. Well,
stay safe.
You know what? Oh, yes, absolutely. If you're still watching, stay safe. And that goes for everyone in the chat. And, you know, like that was I think that was some very pleasant conversation with G-Man. There was no yelling. No one got angry. So I am very happy with how that went. Because, you know, I've seen conversations go multiple ways. And, you know, G-Man's not here, so I don't want to say anything that, you know, he can't answer for. But I've seen conversations go other ways. So I'm very happy that that's how that went. And I hope that this is
I think I bumped into G-Man quite a few years ago in a Steve McRae chat room context. And if that was the G-Man then, he was much more feisty about 4 or 5 years ago.
I think the G-Man has mellowed a bit, and I really appreciate that because it makes I'll be honest, before I saw the debate, if you had said to me, hey, think you should host a you know, an after show with G-Man, I would have said, I don't know. I mean, I don't it could go either way. But then after seeing how he was on that debate, I said, yes, absolutely. G-Man has been nothing but personable and polite, so he can absolutely come on. So you know what? Good job. You have shown several people in the chat, G-Man, if you are watching this in the future, that your previous reputation is something that people should reconsider because I think it is not currently deserved.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were really, like, I think G-Man was great. He was very charismatic and an interesting character to chat with. I think, you know, I had a couple of people who, when I said I was going to have a conversation with G-Man, were kind of like, okay, well, you know, G-Man can be feisty, look out, you know. And I was like, well, you know.
I think he loosened up to where he could laugh and just crack a joke and a smile, and I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, he was having a good time.
I want to point out that by a couple of people, Erika means me.
No, it wasn't just you.
Oh, and thanks for the book plug, Erika. Thank you much.
Hey, listen, that's the thing. I was drumming up that slideshow this afternoon, and I was like, you know, I feel like there's this. What I really want to say here is the rocks were there. You know, because I was like, oh, were you there? And I was like, well, you know, shameless plug.
No, hey, I like it too.
We had a various set of titles for it, and then suddenly the heavens opened, and I said, wait a minute, we should call it The Rocks Were There.
And Ken Ham is still writhing with rage. Well, were you there? Were you there?
Were you there? Hey, while Nephi apparently isn't coming, I'm going to give a quick link to TD Lane who wants to come in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So here you go, TD Lane, if you are still there. I know that you sent me the message on Twitter some, I don't know, 23-ish minutes ago. But if you're still around and you're still on Twitter, check your DMs because you now have a join link. There he is. If Nephi does come in, I'm probably going to have to drop somebody. So we'll have to have a volunteer at that point.
Oh, no.
I believe Streamlabs has a limit of 6.
I know that they have a limit of 6, but I find that even with 5, there's a lot of over-talking, and I don't like that many people. That's a personal thing on my part.
Oh, I'm here to read chat and occasionally make jokes. So.
Well, that's okay.
That's just my job.
Yeah, a whole show on that point that you raised, Erika, about the impact that religion had upon the sciences, or degree of backpedaling that religious people had to do with the realization that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe, and then the realization that there were extinct animals. That was a big shock to people who were in fixed kinds back in the... And then the realization that, like, the rocks weren't fitting the flood, and then you get everything even going weirder when we get into the 20th century.
Yeah, and the thing is that a lot of people are like, well, how is it possible that from a theologic perspective, they're like, how have we been getting it wrong for this long? These are usually the people who are going for a more liberal interpretation, and I almost think they're just looking too hard at it. It's not that difficult, I think, to just chalk it up to cultures being cultures. I mean, that's what humans do, is we share stories and we have conversations about them. Like, we meet new people, and the first thing we want to do is tell them about our culture and what we do and these kinds of things. But I think
some people can take the metaphor and others can't. So the Ken Hams of the world get anxiety attacks when they realize that if there's any tiny little chink in the document, then the whole thing goes kablooey, as opposed to ones that can go, yeah, there can be metaphor and interpretation and so forth and so on.
Yeah, and that has always confused me. And it's also always confused me the insistence that all of these separate works of literature written by different people at different times in different places to different audiences are a monolith. And it's like, that is not the view that you get if you look into, say, early Christianity, or even early, and by early, I guess I mean, 1,500 years ago, Judaism. For Judaism, the big monolith was the Pentateuch. But outside of that, the major prophets were taken separately, one at a time. The historical works that ended up in the Tanakh were taken as, individual works. In Christianity, there wasn't even an established New Testament canon until several centuries in. And before anyone says it, it wasn't decided at the First Council of Nicaea. If you think that, you don't know enough about history, go read a book.
Now, Bart Ehrman's Lost Christianity is just an eye-opener for the huge variety of belief that was going on in the first few centuries.
Well, I think, too, for me, another biggie was the whole fact that early Hebrews were, and this is accepted by even Liberty University, which is like one of the only universities out there that's still having creationist courses.
Are they really?
Yeah, but that early Hebrews
or staying open.
Yeah, well, true. Yeah, we can have a conversation about that. What I mean? But the strange thing is that even they have published literature on monolatry in the early Hebrews, which is essentially, like, as I'm sure all of you know, but for those of you watching who might not, the idea that the early Hebrews were cool with the idea of multiple deities, but so long as that God, Yahweh, or El, was numero uno.
Yeah. Theirs was the hometown God made good.
Right, exactly, yeah. And I think that's very parsimonious, too, with the idea, like, okay, well, why do we have so much sort of tale telling that's very similar between Noah's Ark and the Epic of Gilgamesh, or the Enuma Elish and the biblical creation story? And to me, it almost checks out because it matches up perfectly with them leaving the Babylonian captivity and then being like, listen, it's cool that you guys think Marduk did that shit, but actually it was Yahweh. It's very human. It's very classically human.
They drew on their cultural frame in exactly the same way that Joseph Smith drew on all the cultural frame as a yokel living in upstate New York.
Right. And speaking of cultural frameworks and the Ica stones or whatever we were just talking about, ICA stones, they've got old paleo art, with the theropods with the dragging tail, and it's very charming.
It looks like comic book paleo art. It doesn't even look like actual paleo art from like the 50s or the 60s. It looks like comic book paleo art.
I love it. I think old paleo art is so charming.
Although I realized after I brought up the screen of just like all the Google images, if you look too close, there are things that YouTube might not have liked me prominently displaying, and I was like, maybe I should not have this up too long.
Palaces and the like, and all that.
Yeah,
I don't think it was most intriguing that G-Man hadn't heard of them.
I'm actually a little surprised. Yeah,
I mean, how far out? Yeah, I mean, he's a Hovindista. I mean, that's the subgroup that is precisely the most likely to be pushing that sort of stuff. And so it was odd that he hadn't heard of them.
You know what the thing is, though, is that I don't think G-Man. Maybe this is me not known G-Man, been on the YouTube scene for quite as long as some others, but I went to his main channel and then his sort of science channel, right? And I think he operates more on the main than the science. He still does operate on the science one, but his main one has like 13,000 subs, and it's a pretty big channel.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, all things considered. And I was like, I noticed none of it on the main channel had anything to do with evolution or origins or anything of that nature. And so I almost wonder if G-Man is like very, very into Kent Hovind's like regular theology, if that makes sense, because Kent does regular theology stuff sometimes.
That could be, yeah.
I don't know.
And not really reading much in the anti-evolution literature, because all I heard in his debate with you, when somebody knows their material, even if their notes were eaten by the dog, they have their stuff that they can trot out. And what you got in your debate was boilerplate. It was very generic. It was presuppositional. It was philosophical. He wasn't really comfortable. I love the bit where he wants to talk to you about fossils. I don't think he knows anything about fossils. Why would he want to go there?
Well, and the thing is that I watched a debate with G-Man that happened like a year ago or something of that nature. And he talks about it in his opener about how there's no show me a transitional fossil. And that's why I'm very excited to have that conversation with them, because, I think, and I'm sure you guys are with me on this, but I think most creationists have a very different idea of what a transitional fossil is.
I think it's more that
they have no idea at all.
Right. I think that I'm with RJ on that. It's not that they have a different idea. It's that they don't have a clear idea at all. It's right. Like, because you present them.
I can be a smug bastard here because I've been measuring this for decades. I know of no counterexample anywhere in any of the anti-evolutionary literature, from St. George Mavard in the 1870s down to Michael Denton in the 21st century, of any anti-evolutionist ever conceptualizing what a transitional form would need to look like that they would accept. Zero examples of them thinking that through.
Crazy.
That's a pattern.
Really, over 100 years of nothing.
So Aaron Ra
I know of no counterexample. Not Duane Gish, no one in the intelligent design literature. And when you ask them that question, and I have asked them that question, I've asked Philip Johnson on the reptile-mammal transition, where he immediately said, "Oh, the wrong question to ask. You're falling into an evolutionary trap." And I asked Jonathan Wells on bird evolution, to where he literally wrote back to me and said, "I've never thought about that," of which I'm going, duh.
So I will say, I believe Aaron Ra, and actually, RJ, you might want to contact him about this. Aaron Ra every once in a while tells a story about how he found a definition for a transitional form that seemed reasonable to him on a creationist website. And so he emailed the person running the website and said, well, I mean, if this is your definition, then these animals, and he listed a few, I don't remember which ones he listed, but he listed a few, would seem to meet this definition. Right. And the response that he got back, according to him, and I'm paraphrasing from memory, so, I would check with him, was basically that the guy said, well, those do seem like they meet my definition, but I'm not going to update my website because that would hurt my argument.
Yeah, well, the close you might get is somebody like Kurt Wise in that they can talk about. Kurt Wise functionally agrees that things that look like transitional forms are looking like transitional forms because they meet the criteria, but he argues that it doesn't mean anything. The thing that I would have loved to have asked, and I put it as a question to the debate here, but it didn't filter through because I didn't do the little $5 thingy because I have no money to do that. But G-Man, okay, imagine if you dug up the perfect transitional between an ape and a human being, one where you know that this thing perfectly articulated, you can be 5 fossils, it can have whatever features you tell us, that's perfect intermediate. How would it look different from what we actually know? How could we tell the two apart? That was the thing I did with Wells on Archaeopteryx. I wanted him to describe a perfect bird transition and tell me how it would look different from Archaeopteryx. And he couldn't do that. Their brains just seize up, because the moment they would set out criteria that they would accept, they'd have to accept it, because they wouldn't be able to wriggle around on the data. So yeah, I would love to know whether that example that Aaron Ra had.
Yeah, email him. Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, email him. I've heard him tell the story a few times, and I think it would be like if you could get the actual emails on that, RJ, I think it could slightly change your data set. Because that would be a creationist
from
agreeing.
0 to 1.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Hey, you know what? That if you're looking at like factor,
kind
that's
of
like
an advantage. As an old fart, I have an advantage that I've read a lot of that older material that was available in book form. Dwayne Gish and Henry Morris and all of that, where very little of that is available online.
Hey,
and then I pay attention to the onliners and the video lectures. There are transcripts of Kent Hovind's speeches, for example, so you can kind of track stuff down that.
Mm-hmm.
And after I got far enough down the line to where I was, and now I was detecting a pattern, and the very inability to answer the question, to conceptualize the question, means that that's something that's a mind block in their own head. The speciation matter is another one. That they can't quite conceptualize what it means to do speciation. You'll notice that he does. G-Man was typical in that he's not thinking of a population of organisms. He's thinking of an individual organism that's somehow the perfect mate that's popped up accidentally and independently, and then they find each other from thousands of miles away. That's a typical Kent Hovind trope.
Yeah, like he asked me that in my debate. Actually, he was like, okay, so what was the first bird? And then, I was like, well, it would be a population. And he's like, oh, so a whole bunch of these evolved at once? And I was like, well, kind of. And he kept interrupting me on this. And several times during the debate, I had to say, I would like to be able to finish my thought. And he was, oh, okay. And it was just like, ugh.
Another biggie for creationists that I've seen, at least with this colleague that I used to get coffee with, the moment for him that was like an oh shit moment in his head was when I sat down with the math for what a 6,000-year-old Earth would look like with 4.8 to 4.5 billion years of radiometric decay and heat loss.
It would just be a molten ball of lava.
Yeah, because I sat down with him and I was like, so how are you mitigating this heat? And he looked at it and he was like, well, I'd have to look at the literature on that. And so the next time we met up, I said, okay, well, what have you found? And he was like, well, it looks to me like this is something that they're working on, but they don't have an answer for you.
I just figured it out.
Yeah, and what I said to him was, I said, all right, so here's where we're at, because he was the classic individual who was arguing that creation should, teach the controversy. And I was like, so here's where we're at. Mm-hmm. Currently, you're working with a hypothesis that has a massive empirical deficit in that it has to be rejected in its current form in its entirety, because a huge portion of what you're trying to teach, which is the Noachian deluge.
Hold on. We got Nephilim free here.
Wait, really? Nephi?
Oh, Nephi.
Oh, Nephi.
Hey, I do want a quick volunteer to drop out. If Nephi's actually here. Nephi, you really here?
I'll volunteer.
Okay. Well, thanks. Nephi, hold on. Nephi, are you really here?
Hi, Ben.
Have a good night.
All right, night, Bent. I think Nephi is here.
Nephi? Can we hear you? Are you muted?
I can't. He's not muted on my end. I'm not sure. Nephi, you might want to drop out and come back in and double check your mic before you come back in, just to make sure it's set to the right mic or anything, because I can't hear you right now. So if you're talking,
we don't even have a good avatar.
But Erika, I figured out the whole the heat problem. I just solved it.
Tell me.
Okay. The Tower of Babel wasn't trying to get to God. It was just a thermal radiator. They were trying to radiate away all the excess
Cooling
heat.
tower.
It's
Yes,
the
cooling
space.
tower.
Yes, exactly. They were going to put on the top of it a bunch of metal fins
It's
to
the
radiate
spoon.
away the heat.
Yeah.
Spoon and the cup of
There we go. You solved
Exactly.
it. There it is. Yeah.
All right, Nephi, can we hear you?
No,
Hey, guys, can you hear me?
Oh, yep,
Oh,
there he is.
Okay, cool.
All right, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened, but I was like, oh, Nephi's here, and then I was like, or maybe he's not.
I was worried we'd lost you because I didn't see an avatar, and I was like, oh shoot, I thought it might have been a sneaky troll coming in here.
All right, so Nephi, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked everyone when we started this stream, which is, in 3 sentences or so, none of which can have more than 3 clauses, so no sneaky run-ons. What was your initial impression of the debate?
I didn't see much of it.
Well,
Yeah.
give us your impression of what you did see.
I didn't hardly see any of it, honestly. I saw like a minute and a half, and then I left because I wanted to catch something on TV. And sorry, I just
That's
being
fair.
honest, I didn't see it.
Sure, fair enough.
All right, that's okay. So, but you did. I actually heard from some other people besides you that you wanted to come in. So,
Oh, I didn't ask to come in. I just quit what I was doing and saw there was a notification, so I popped in. But I'm happy to discuss stuff with you for a while.
Well, I don't know who said that about you then, because there were a number of people who said, "Oh, Nephilim Free might want to come in, and he's interested." And so I said, "Okay, I'll send him a link." I thought that you had been in the chat and saying that, but I guess not.
Maybe they were messing around.
Well, welcome to the channel. I don't think you've ever been here before. Actually, I know you've never been here before.
No, I saw you moderating a debate on Standing for Truth's channel. That's the only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I had to moderate Erika more than I had to moderate Bill.
That's true.
So, have you got a link to the web page where this is being streamed on your channel? You could give that to me. I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Give me 1 second. I will grab that because I don't have it currently up.
Okay.
Just 1 second. Let me pull up my YouTube page because I'm looking from the YouTube live stream dashboard.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the kitchen and get a glass of water. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Well, and remember, the short dinosaur arms are tough to get the little mouse moved around and all of that. So you have to cut some slack there for Diaper.
That's what I have my butler for. He's actually the one that runs the mouse. All right, so I'm putting the watch link in the private chat. So when Nephi comes back, we can let him know. Remind me if I don't let him know that it is in the private chat. The watch link.
Okay, I'm back.
Oh, welcome back. So Nephi, the watch. That is a nice avatar. I like that. The watch link is in the private chat for this meeting.
Okay, see that. Thanks.
So yeah, it is the last message unless someone else snuck another message in there. And T-Back says, at Bent, are you the butler, sir? So Bent isn't here. However, I can neither confirm nor deny that Bent Hovind will... Actually, I'll just confirm it.
I was going to say, I can confirm it.
Yeah, the only time that the butler has appeared either audibly or visually was audibly on a FTFE video, believe it or not, where he was in fact voiced by Bent Hovind, who I up-pitched to make him sound more like a small triconodont, because that's what my butler is.
My only job was reading questions from the chat, and I failed that because I was alt-tabbing trying to find a meme.
Oh, T. Lane, you ruined it. You ruined You know what? You've ruined this entire stream.
I know.
I'm curious.
What kind of secretary bird are you?
Worst secretary.
Poor one.
Erika, what was your question? I'm sorry.
No, I was curious because Nephi, I've seen you, and I've had a decent amount of conversation and contact with SFT. I just call him Standing in all of our conversations. But yeah, I've seen some of your comments on his videos. I knew eventually we would get the opportunity to chat. I had a feeling that it would happen, so I haven't really responded to any of them, at least over on SFT's channel. But I'm glad to finally meet.
Well, it's good to meet you.
Absolutely.
I enjoy meeting new people.
Yeah. So do I.
And I feel like until that moderation that Nephi wasn't even aware I existed, which is perfectly fine because most people aren't.
No, me either.
Actually, almost, actually no more than half now of the people who are subscribed to this channel have subscribed in the past month. So until last month, way fewer people knew who I was.
Hey, I've been there. I'm still there.
Yeah, it's so Nephi. We got RJ here, we got Erika here, we got me here, we got TD Lane here, and I guess except for TD Lane, who I don't think does a whole lot of creation versus evolution content, unless I'm wrong. And
I'm planning on doing some science.
Okay,
content.
So I'm actually going to step away to get a beverage because the room I'm in is stiflingly hot because I live in Phoenix and I also have my computer running day and night to do rendering. So
while you have your food replicator there, you can just tell it computer iced tea Southern style with lemon, please.
Oh, you know what? That's been my drink of choice for like weeks now because I have a stockpile of tea and I don't want to go to the store to get anything else. So
fair enough.
Yeah, that's been my drink of choice. Although I actually do have a little bit of Coke now, so I'm actually going to get one of those. But I figure you have to have questions for RJ and or Erika, so just launch into that, and I'll be back in just a second.
Okay, no.
Oh, Corporal Anon, otherwise known as Colton, is in the chat. He has made a YouTube channel. Go subscribe to him.
Yes,
encourage me. Thank you.
So Nephi, I'm interested. You've been doing this for a long time, huh?
About 12 years now.
Yeah. Is it still as fun as it used to be?
Yeah. Well, it's not as vigorous. It's not as active as it used to be. Back in the old days, there was a whole bunch of very vehement, militant atheists that I engaged in debates with, and those guys were just. You ever seen the movie Clockwork Orange? Okay, they give you again idea of the thugs that were in that movie.
Okay.
They were very, very, very aggressive, and I debated sometimes 5, 6, 7 of them at a time. It was a lot of fun because it was really rambunctious, but things have kind of cooled down. People are a little calmer now than they used to be back then, and I'm glad of that, though.
Yeah, I think it's more fun anyways when things are more relaxed. I feel like it may not be as rowdy, but I feel like people have generally a better time because no one's wasting all that energy hating another person's guts.
Yeah, I think there's a place for dumpster fires, but I'll be honest, most of the time I would prefer it to be a nice, friendly conversation where people can discuss things.
Yeah, I respond to things. I don't. How do I say it? If somebody is very assertive about something being true, I'll challenge it straight up, but it's not it's less rambunctious. That was a good word than it used to be. And I like it that way, a little more laid back. I've changed my approach. I'm a little bit less militant now than I used to be back then. And a little more calmer, a little more heady than emotional, and I think that's a good thing. So I think everybody has kind of taken that approach. Most of us.
I actually want to say I've noticed that recently with some of your more recent interactions with people because up until very recently, the interactions that I've seen, I had said I don't know if I really want to talk to you, and I'm sorry about this. This is no longer reflective of my opinion.
Say it the way you see it, man. You're not going to hurt my feelings.
Some of your earlier interactions, I was like, I don't know that I really want to talk to Nephilim Free.
Well, I mean, if I'm in a group of guys and they're all very aggressive, I'll respond with aggression. And that's kind of the reason I did so much, I think, because they were very aggressive with me and I responded in like kind, with... But it's tough when you've got 5 atheists and you're debating them all at one time, I think that really it was like a school of hard knocks. It really teaches you how to debate on the fly when you're debating 5 people at one time, man. I'm telling you, that's chaos right there.
Yeah. And actually, I don't even know if we have a panel full of atheists or not. I don't bother talking about it, but I don't even know what the position here is, and I don't honestly care all that much. I don't think that your position on God is relevant to your position on the science unless the two are in conflict, which I don't think they always are.
I would disagree with that. I would very much disagree. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think you could even do science if it wasn't for God. Man doesn't create laws of physics. He can only learn how to describe them. These these rules and regularities in order. It came from somewhere. And there just isn't any reason to believe that natural chemistry is able to do it. I mean, the job of every chemist in the world is to make matter do what it doesn't want to do. Think about it. That's what a chemist's job is to make matter do what it doesn't want to do.
And now I wish I had my chemical engineer friend here.
And well, ask him if I'm not telling the truth. That's what he does. That's what chemists do. And it can be very difficult, And I don't see any organizing principle. There is. I'm just going to come out and say it. There is no organizing principle whereby the laws of nature cause matter to organize to high levels of complexity. There isn't anything. And so that just on its face value, natural chemistry is simply unable to explain the order and the complexity, I would of organic life. There's just not a mechanism there.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
We get you that. You got that. Okay.
So unless anyone else has a question, I actually have a question about that. And so my question is, so wouldn't a conception of God different from the one that you have, but that still is a conception of a designer who created the laws of physics? Like, for instance, maybe a deistic God, like the God of the philosophers. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that also accomplish the task that or the philosophical grounding that you're trying to look for?
I don't think so. It seems to me organic life was designed for a purpose, and there was a lot of intentionality and purpose put into it, into the beauty and complexity of it. That sounds like a very personable entity to me, one that created things with purpose, and to know, that he is the creator, and instead of some, offstandish, deity that doesn't care and just, blows on his fingertips and polishes them on his shoulder and says, yeah, those are the little things that I made this quick up out of the earth.
So
I don't think
right?
that's, I don't think see that as a plausible explanation.
I have a quick technical request. Is there any way that you could move the microphone a little bit farther away from your mouth? Because every once in a while, some of the sibilant sounds are clipping just a bit.
Okay.
So
that's much better.
I'm a little interested in that though, Nephi, because from a perspective, like I get that you're kind of coming from a point of view where it's like, God is the source of all order, right? So anything that is ordered sort of has to stem from God. I guess where I sort of falter when it comes to creationists and their interpretation of God's hand in nature is why couldn't evolution work just as any other mechanism does? You know what I mean? Like being put in place in the same way that the laws of physics are, or the laws of chemistry are. You know what I mean?
I'm not sure what you're saying, but I don't see any organizing principle. I don't see that natural chemistry is able to accomplish.
What would an organizing principle look like?
That's a good question. Maybe you could tell me, since you believe there must be.
Well, you're using the term organizing principle. How could you tell an organizing principle from a not organizing principle?
Well, purposefulness. Things that are biological demonstrate purpose. And they're
so what is the purpose of nematodes?
I'm gonna go to the restroom. We're back.
Well, on the face value, I would say in the broadest sense to express God's creativity. But when we look at things that are on the smaller scale, we see purpose in things. For example, the processes of the ribosome as it makes proteins has been discovered to be prescriptive information, which is in functional information, and the ribosome actually operates algorithmically. So an algorithm is a product of an intelligence. It's a process designed
when was that done?
Designed to produce something for a purpose. It requires mental properties.
When was that done?
When God designed organic life in the beginning.
When was that?
I would say 6,200 years ago, maybe.
Oh, well, and if you were wrong and the design event took place 4 billion years ago, would you have to deal with what happened after that? to how much? Would you have to not say how much of the creation was intentional and how much was just the operation of the design system?
No, I don't think anything falls outside of design. I don't see how. I see purpose, intentionality in the design of everything, and astonishing complexity, and things that
we get it. You do that, yeah.
Nature
do you
is
understand
unable.
That?
Nature is unable.
Do you understand
to
that other
produce.
people don't see that?
Well, humans are intelligent designers. Is that what you're asking?
No. You understand that other people with different perspectives don't see the sign of design that you do. For example, Laplace saying God is an unnecessary hypothesis.
Well, sure, there are people that say that, of course.
Okay. Have you thought through why they think that?
Oh, of course I do. Yes. I know why they think that.
Okay.
So,
by the way, if you discovered that the Earth was in fact 4 billion years old rather than 6,000, how would that affect your thinking about anything?
Well, that would discredit the Bible.
I want to let Erika go ahead.
My point was almost on design. Do you think that anything other than humans, and if we're sort of assuming your perspective is accurate for the sake of the argument, anything other than humans and God are intelligent designers?
I don't know of anything that's an intelligent designer. Creation. There are creatures that create things. I don't know that they're designers more than applying instincts given to them by the Creator. For example, termites build mounds which have a natural airflow that goes under the mound and comes back up to cool it out of that. I don't think termites invented that idea. They do it consistently, that they came up with the idea to design termite mounds in this way on their own by happenstance, and they don't have any little classes, pay attention, all you young little termites, we're going to teach you how to make a automatically air cooling termite mound. I think the Creator put this instinct in them, and it's an example of intelligent design.
Termites actually make me think...
So who created the Creator's intelligence?
Well, actually, RJ,
I think it's nonsensical to ask who created God.
I actually have a question relating to intelligent design and eusocial insects, although not by eusocial insects. And it's to say that there are certain troops of chimpanzees which will make essentially fishing rods for ants, which are a different group of eusocial insects, and they will carefully strip off extraneous branches and use their saliva as a trapping mechanism to get the ants to stick to it. And this is a culturally dependent thing. Not every troop knows how to do this, and they do in fact have to hold classes. They have to have their infants watch them make these tools and use them in order for the infants to learn how to do it. Why isn't that an intelligently designed tool?
Well, I think God gave creatures the abilities to the intelligence to use tools. Crows and other birds will actually take small sticks and use them as spears to catch small fish, and then pull the fish out of the water, put their foot on the fish and pull the stick out of the fish, and then proceed to eat the fish. So even birds use tools, which I think is astonishing.
I agree.
I think God gave creatures the intelligence to use tools.
So, but I guess the question that I still have is, it seems like that is a non-human instance of intelligent design. Why isn't it? Well,
I don't see how. All we see is that the creature has the ability, the intelligence to use a tool. But I don't see how that...
we don't have any intelligence to use tools. Then.
I don't see how that's
we don't create things. We're only acting on our instinct. You argue that?
No, I don't. But I just don't see how. I don't see it. It's plausible to believe that evolution could produce a creature as capable of doing that.
Perhaps I'll give an example.
Have you studied any of the technical literature on that point?
I've studied a lot of stuff about evolution. I just know that organisms have the intelligence to do amazing things, and they have instincts to do things too.
But that sounds like you're describing humans.
What I asked you, Neph.
I don't
Have you
see.
studied any of the cognitive literature on the origin of consciousness and tool making use
I've
in
read
non-human organisms?
I've read some things about it. I don't see that as support for evolutionism, though.
But that wasn't the
No,
question.
nothing is going to ever be that for you, isn't it?
Of course, no.
It still remains the question.
There you go.
The way that we
So what
recognize
it boils down to is, where'd they get the intelligence? You know, were they created with the intelligence, or did they evolve it? That's the question at hand.
So
I don't see evolution as an explanation for the intelligence.
All right, I want Erika to go.
Yeah, let me dip in here. So, Neph, I don't know how much you know about my background, but I'm in the process of getting a master's degree, master's of research in primatology. So I study primates a lot, and I've spent a lot of my past year reading about primates and the things that they can and cannot do. And are you familiar with the concept of the theory of mind?
Yeah, actually, I like talking about the philosophy of mind.
Well, so the theory of mind, in sort of a concise way, at least in the way that it was taught to me, is that it's essentially an organism's ability to guess, or not rather to guess, to understand what another sees or what another understands. So sort of an example of this would be like chimpanzees are aware, like let's say you're a chimpanzee and you see a snake. If there are other chimpanzees in the area, a chimpanzee is capable of understanding that those other individuals don't know that there's a snake there. And so they alarm call with a higher frequency than if they're by themselves, in which case they don't alarm call at all. So it's almost like, and this is putting it quite crudely, but it's almost a proto-empathy in a way, putting yourself in another shoes.
Right. There's all kinds of animals do that. Gophers will do it. All kinds of creatures will have collars. Squirrels even have collars, and they're usually females, older females, that will call out to the group to warn them, you know, if they see a falcon or a hawk cruising around. Yeah, I don't see that as something. I think, so here's my point of view, is that all animal life has spirit, and spirit is where intelligence comes from. I think the atheist's explanation of mind being a materialistic one is sheer nonsense. It doesn't stand up to reason that brains equal mind.
I have some...
Or that the mind is an emergent property of the brain, which is a term that atheists like to throw around a lot, but none can ever truly explain.
I have a really big question about that then, which is, we know that damage to the physical structure of the brain causes changes in the mind. If the brain, let me finish, if the brain is not the seat of consciousness, why is that the case? Well,
because creatures are dualistic, where we were created with spirit and flesh. It's also true that mental processes, repeated habitual mental processes or behaviors, can affect the brain. Did you know that a person who engages in a particular activity for an awful lot over a period of time, it can actually change the shape of their brain? So it can go both ways. Mental activities are able to change the shape of the brain, and brain activities are interlinked with mental activities. I see it like this: if you take away a human's eyes, their spirit can no longer perceive the world visually. If you take away their tongue, they cannot taste the environment physically anymore. Take away their skin, they don't have any more tactile sensation of the environment around them. Take away their ears, they can't hear the environment around them anymore. And if you took away all the senses of a human being, you'd be left with a mind that's thinking but can't sense the environment around them, which would be a torturous existence. But I believe that's actually the case.
So how could we tell the difference between there being a spirit which informs consciousness and interacts with the brain, and there not being one, and the brain actually being the seat of this consciousness?
Well,
how would we test that?
That's tricky, because you can't show that you can't separate show the mind by itself, and you can't show the body by itself when you're looking at the whole organism, because we're a product of both. And but there is, I'd say, strong evidence that mind is not an emergent property of the brain. For example, if the mind is just a product of chemistry in a brain, then it's just produced by chemical reactions. All our thoughts and emotions are produced by chemical reactions. And if that were true, then the statement, there's insufficient evidence for the existence of God, is simply chemical reactions. It's not a truth statement. It's neither true nor false. It's just chemistry.
Okay, hold on.
And I think that contradicts
Nephi,
our common sense
hold on a second.
about the world.
And now this is an important point, because I have professionally worked with logic circuits electronically, and logic circuits are perfectly capable of assessing the truth of various inputs or the falsity of various inputs according to completely physical means. And I don't think anyone is going to argue that there's a machine spirit, like we're playing Warhammer 40,000, where we have to propitiate the machine spirit lest it be angry at us. So we know of physical, I think we can all agree, non-spiritual arrangements of physics, which is what chemistry comes down to, that can assess truth statements. That's how we're talking right now.
I don't agree with that. I don't think that's true.
Yeah, we get it that you don't agree with it.
Right. Yeah, I don't agree. I think that you think you've done it, but I don't believe you have. And I mean, consider this. If thoughts are simply brain states, right, which neurons are electrically charged, electrochemically charged for synapse, then they allegedly they're storing an electrochemical state, and millions of these in a particular pattern in the brain is what creates an image of an elephant in your mind. I think that's a nonsensical idea for the simple fact that I think it's illogical. RJ, you got to let me finish the sentence. RJ, you got to let me finish the sentence.
Okay, hold on.
I think it's illogical to say the position of matter in space is what creates a thought or a memory. I find no reason behind believing that. For example, if you think of a picture of an elephant, or you think of your Uncle Fred, the difference between them, according to the atheist, has to be electrochemical brain states of which neurons are charged and which ones are not. Hold on. In physics.
No, we get it. I
think that's an irrational conclusion.
Okay, but we have to let RJ respond now. So go ahead, RJ.
Yeah. There's actually technical work where they've been able to use brain scans to recreate the image of what's going on inside a person's head. Are you saying that's impossible, or do you accept that it can be done? In which case, how exactly did they do that if the brain state is not preserving the mental image?
I think you're exaggerating it, but what they've actually shown is that a certain type of mental activity can be shown by patterns of electrical activity in a brain, but not specifics. I mean,
this is an actual image of a face.
You're not going to be able to show an image of a face by showing a brain state. No, I don't believe that.
But they did.
RJ, do you have the link for that?
Well, you should check the technical literature.
Yeah, I think it's a wild interpretation of the data is what I believe.
RJ, if you put the citation in the private chat, we can screen share that up here for the audience.
Can you give me?
I'll have a bibliography to find.
Well, see, if I was to ask you.
Hold on.
What is logical about the arrangement of matter in space being able to produce an image?
Okay, hold on a second.
Because I want Erika to go. I'm going to take off, guys, because I can see it's going to be a one-way conversation. You guys talking and interrupting.
No, I just want Erika to be.
And I'm not into that kind of thing. I did it for 12 years. I don't do it anymore.
Well, Nephi, can I?
You guys have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Okay.
All right. Well, I guess I'm going to have to take back everything I said about Nephi.
That's where he goes. That when he gets contradicted.
Go ahead, TD.
Can't go on his long diatribe.
I was going to say, Call Me Email had a question, I think, for Nephi. So then, how does out-of-body experiences work? How does a spirit see and hear during an out-of-body experience?
Well, I think, what I wanted to ask him too is, he's acting like because you can't assess each neuron in its ability and sort of in its role to transmit specific images, that you can't make predictions or even evaluations of the whole, which is something that we do in physics constantly.
All the time. And an ant colony. The individual ants do things like little automatons, and yet they end up doing extremely complex behavior that way, which, because he doesn't study ants and he doesn't study any of the technical literature and he can't get past his presuppositions, he's living in a world that doesn't connect up to anything.
Well, but the thing is too, is like I'm not trying to like throw shade or anything like that, but I had a single physics lecture on like the double slit experiment and whatever string theory, like what we know about how string theory can be applied in certain aspects of physics. And like, even from that perspective, and I did take an entomology course, so the ant thing is a little different, but it's like the fact that conceptually you can't kind of wrap your mind around the idea of assessing a whole without understanding the individual parts seems kind of, it seems like something intuitive to me that we see that in nature constantly.
In a way, he's like a Taoist. The Taoists didn't allow you to take things apart in pieces and look at how the pieces connected up. And that's why the Chinese never developed science.
Hey, they developed gunpowder and printing presses, RJ. So,
Oh, yeah, technology they had down. But I had the delight of working as a teaching assistant for Professor Wong out at EWU years ago. He was from Hong Kong back when it was still separate from China. And I learned tons about the history of China and the development of Neo-Confucianism, which was the embalming fluid of the Chinese culture. It had a devastating effect on them. And I'm not the only person to have noticed this. Quite a few scholars have pointed that out. It's the reason why, although the Chinese were technologically so sophisticated and had everything they needed to be a really powerful state, they blew their foot off intellectually with the fact they just couldn't get a grip on that fundamental experimentalism that those pesky little Europeans eventually figured out how to do.
Well, and I think almost and maybe this is totally off base, but just from what I do know about Eastern culture, some aspects of Eastern culture, the only sort of Southeast Asian country I've been to was Thailand. I was there for a decent amount of time, but
I've been to Thailand.
It's wait, you did go to Thailand?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was so cool.
I had fun.
They have their own form of chess.
Yeah, I enjoyed my time in Thailand. It's a biodiversity hotspot. I actually had the pleasure for my professor at the time. He's a herpetologist, so he's a big snake guy, and he was really excited because one of the first days we got there, they'd gotten hold of a banded sea crate, Ooh. Hanging out in our little neck of the woods of the Sakura bioreserve. And he was like, "Oh my God, it's a banded crate, like this craziest thing I've ever seen." And I was like, "Get that thing away from me!" I love snakes from.
Yeah, I was going to say, in case anyone is wondering, it's a particularly venomous kind of sea snake.
Yeah.
However, they're extreme. Well, so the weird thing about sea snakes is, despite being extremely venomous, as a rule, they're also extremely docile.
Yeah, that's what they. I noticed there was kind of an interesting contrast, because the team there wasn't a sea crate team. It was they were the Cobra team at Sakura Environmental Research Station.
Don't mess with cobras.
Yeah, they were into the monocled and the kings that you could find around the area, and they did a lot of outreach with local villages where they basically come in and they would be like, "Look, like 99% of cobra bites come from people messing around with cobras, trying to be cool and like get the cobra out of the house. Call us.
Hey guys, hold my beer. Watch this."
Yeah, we'll come and get the cobra out of your house. Yeah. It makes cobras look bad. And there was this guy. I really like to tell this story because it's quite brief. But the head of the Cobra team was this guy Bartok, but we just all call him Bart. He's this Polish dude. And he's like the biggest human being that I've ever seen in my life. Like he could fill a doorway. He's just super tall and very broad shouldered. And he had a Polish accent, so I can't do a Polish accent, but I can do a decent Russian accent. And one night we were sitting around having some beers, which I've learned is a very big part of academia, having beers and talking about fighting about the minutia. And he was telling us the story about how he was out radio tracking a king cobra female, and so you have the radio tracker, and he'd take the motorbike out into the down the fire lanes in the forest, and he's looking around for the cobra. And again, he's this huge guy, like I can't emphasize this enough. And he's like, "I'm looking around for this cobra, and I take a step down, and I feel something lumpy under my foot. I look up and face to face with king cobra." And talking about how this cobra, because they're so big.
Yeah.
I think they're elapids, right?
I would have to look at the systematics.
I'm not sure. I'm probably talking out of my ass, but this cobra was so long and so thick that when he'd stepped on it, it had reared up and hooded and was looking him in the eyes. You know, this guy who's like, what, 7 feet tall or something like that? And he was basically like, I just took my foot off really, really slowly and started backing up. He's like, I thought it was dead.
Good cobra. Nice cobra.
Yeah.
Your
turned out
space. Fine.
Goodness.
it was a completely different cobra from the one he was radio tracking. And he was like, it was a shame that we couldn't, like, you know, wrangle it. He was like, because they have the snake tongs to wrangle cobras.
I know they've made great progress on the genetics of venoms and how they developed out a salivary gland, all that kind of stuff. That's there's been a lot of progress on working all of that out, which I'm sure Nephi will have not paid any attention.
Remember, if a creationist calls all snakes one kind, then that means they have to accept venom developed independently in that lineage.
True.
Although I don't think any of them do. Not that they really think, given the role of serpents, I thought there would have been more baraminology stuff on them, but they haven't really been very interested in them.
Nothing official, although bottom of the barrel grassroots have said that.
So I will say, so when I was in Thailand, a friend of mine got bitten by a primate.
Oh, really? Which primate? Do you know? Probably.
So I don't actually remember. This was probably 12, 15 years ago or something. So this was a while ago. But I'm extremely confident it wasn't actually a simiiform, but I don't know which non-simiiform primates are around.
I mean, it could have been, as far as non-simiiforms, you're not going to find any anthropoid primates in that part of the world.
No?
At all.
I thought there were some tarsiers in the area.
I don't know that tarsiers make it that far. They might, but
they might. Well, it didn't look like, so it didn't look like an old world monkey, but my memory is extremely
maybe they were on vacation.
I mean, maybe. But anyway, it might have actually been so here's the thing, right? Like, it was 12 years ago, and basically the area I was in was full of people who would shove small primates into your hands, take a picture, and then demand money for you having taken a picture with their little captive, whatever it is. And they weren't all the same. Some of them were definitely various monkeys that you would be more familiar with. Like, there were some various kinds of macaques and things like that. They were usually infants. But yeah, I was with my friend, and we were walking down the street. I think we were trying to get lunch or something. And this woman shoves a small, tiny primate of some kind. I don't remember.
You know what? I'll tell you what it was. I bet it was a slow loris.
Oh, well, then I'm glad it didn't break the skin.
No, yeah, me too. But because I was just pulled up tarsiers, and they're Indonesian, Malaysian, and Filipino tarsiers. But I was thinking about it, and I was like, what other small primates? And I was like,
loris are some of those with the kind of big eyes.
Yeah, they're
and they're slightly venomous.
Their underarm patches.
Yeah, they have venom patches under their armpits.
Quite a few critters are like that. Don't platypuses have venom?
They do. Yeah, they have a venom spur. The way lorises do it is they have glands in their armpits, and they rub the secretions of the glands onto their teeth, and it gives them a venomous bite.
Another interesting thing about lorises, slow lorises anyways, is we would go out looking for them this research station was really cool because there were a bunch of different people there, like, doing their own projects, like PhD students and things like that. There was a bat team, and I got to go out with the bat team, and they put up these huge thin nets, and just bats fly into them, and then they pull them out and they ID them, and then they let them go. It was very cool.
Nice.
Probably not the best though. I mean, as long as you don't eat them, I suppose.
Yeah, I was hoping in vain that Nephi would pick up my bait about what was the design purpose of Alzheimer's disease, but he scampered away from that in a hurry.
Yeah, he didn't.
Yeah, I got to be honest.
Surprised.
I was actually softening on my I don't really want to talk to Nephi stance recently after watching a few of his things, but now it's basically just back. Nephi is just. I guess other people than me can rein him in a bit, but my experience is that Nephi has two modes. One is talk over people, and the other one is rage quit. And today
crowds.
Yeah,
maybe that's true. But today he went from he started
he's
going.
The only one
that
made me lose my temper.
I
just drove me up the wall because I was trying to get him to explain what his model was, and he doesn't have a model, and he doesn't like to be pressed on the fact that he doesn't have a model.
No, that made me actually physically uncomfortable was listening to that conversation with you and Jackson Nephi on that subject. I remember that paper too, and I was actually watching it. This was several months ago, and I was like, oh my god, like my heart is racing, and I was like, oh my god, I'm angry. Like,
yeah.
Well, boy, I was angry. Yikes!
Yeah,
You just couldn't in a fixed debate format, the mellow Nephi can operate for a while, but it's when he's in a private conversation like he was there that he just gradually escalates to the it becomes a lecture series that he doesn't want you to interrupt.
Yeah, and that's not what anyone's here for. And the thing is, I let him go for a while, several times after he had made his point, and he was just continuing to repeat himself, just to be polite, because you want to repeat yourself a few times in slightly different words. Okay, whatever. But at a certain point, and it really has reconfirmed. And Erika, we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
If there's not too many creationists that I'm really not interested in talking to at all. But Nephi he was until recently, and now is again, one of them. And I'm actually a little bit shocked based on, like, if you had told me a year ago that I would have a much more pleasant conversation with Gman than I had with Nephi, I wouldn't have believed you.
Yeah, that does sound amazing. Doesn't it? Yeah.
I got.
Lord knows I love to talk, but anybody can tell me shut up, RJ, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I've got two things from chat. The first is from Vandalia. I got bitten by a primate once. It was my little brother when he was 2.
Ooh,
and the other one is from Call Me Emo again. Did you guys cover G-Man's change in anatomy argument?
I haven't, but I would have to watch more of it, but I'm open to doing it. I don't know.
Is this in reference to?
Yeah, it was throwing me off.
I suspect it's in reference to the debate,
because so much of it was what is his point? Because, like, from a frog to a human being, there's actually remarkably little anatomical bone difference going on between them, even and fish.
Yeah, RJ, honestly, at one point I caught myself because, G-Man, as charismatic as he is, when he starts laughing, I start laughing, and then I can't take myself seriously.
He got an infectious good laugh. Yeah,
he does. But when he said, "What's the he was like, "How do you get from a frog to me?" And I almost said, "Well, really, what's the difference? What are the big differences between an amphibian of any kind and a human? Like what morphologically is novel?
Frogs
don't expect him to delineate that."
Well, and I realized the second that I said, "What's the difference between a human and a frog?" Really, that he was just going to start laughing, and then I wasn't going to be able to control myself.
Yeah.
I caught myself. I was like, "That's not."
Oh, by the way, that paper on, I think it was in 2017 on the heart evolution thing. I think I found that in my reference, so I put a link up to it in the live chat while you were going on.
Wait,
awesome.
it's from 2017 for the heart evolution?
Yeah.
I think. Wait.
Yeah, that paper that you had alluded to, I looked at my reference bibliography and I found it. Somebody that starts with an S.
Yeah, Stephenson. Yeah, I have a mini link underneath it. But
so anyway, I found an open access version of it, and I put that in the link along the way because I thought everyone would kind of find it interesting.
It's a cool paper. I plugged it into Sci-Hub, and I was scanning. I didn't have time to read the entire thing, but I was scanning it, and I was like, I'd remembered.
And the fact that it's very recent means that it's compiling the current understanding of how things are going on. And so when anyone is saying, well, how did hearts evolve? How did fill in the blank evolve? Well, actually, there's a lot of work on that.
Well, and that's exactly why I structured my opener the way that I did, because I was like, even if we're not going to spend any time talking about it, I want to flick, irreducible complexity to the curb right now. Because let's just get these big ones out of the way. And the whole point was, the reason I'm showing all of these is because so often creationists will just pop off and say we don't know how whatever blood evolved, and then it's like there's a myriad. Of
everybody in the science geek side in the live chat was loving it, Erika. Yeah. They were all just gangbusters on it because it was going, wow, ooh, neat, ooh. Ah.
Actually, Erika, I want to let you know that so Ben Tobin and I were on Discord together during the debate, and we were not all of our comments went into the live chat. Some of it was just between us. And one of the things that he said when you had the skull lineup up, which by the way is a great picture. I love it.
I use it every time because
I know.
It's such a good picture.
But he was saying, this is the kind of thing that when I was a creationist, I would have said, yeah, how do you get from A to N, I think was the last one.
Mm-hmm.
Because no one had ever bothered to show me the other ones. But yeah, when I look at like B and C, I can't tell which one is which. They look identical to me. And the same is true for any two adjacent skulls.
No, exactly. And that's because...
And then when you think through... Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm sure we're about to say the same thing.
Yeah, that when you then think about the genetic systems that are producing those morphological change, often in the case of where there's the neoteny issue, that you don't, and allometric issues, you don't even involve new genes. You're just having little tiny tweaky of the cis-regulatory cascades.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is that there's this great picture out there of a juvenile chimpanzee. It actually, I think it's troglodytes, but it could be Peniscus, it could be a bonobo. But it's juvenile chimp, essentially, member of genus Pan, and it's sitting straight up with its shoulders back, and its head is held almost directly above, the shoulder girdle. And the way that it's sitting, the way that the skull kind of bends and tucks under in the back, you look at that.
Neotenous primates.
Yeah, you're like, it's retained neoteny. Like, that's it. And I've been told that many times before. But
Stephen Jay Gould, I was so impressed by Stephen Jay Gould. Big things that he dealt with so often in his writing was about that ontogeny and neoteny issue. That's where I first learned the word, was from reading all of that Stephen Jay Gould stuff.
Yeah, and it was a really cool experience when I was back in the UK. I had the I went to the Natural History Museum many times, but there's also a smaller museum that you can go to that's free called Grant's Museum of Zoology, or Grant's Zoological Museum, and it's got an excellent display case that shows it's got a juvenile chimpanzee and then a juvenile orangutan right next to each other, and if you're just looking at those skulls, if you just glanced at them, you could be like, that's a toddler's skull. It's so human. Is just for lack of a better term, no brow ridges yet that are really that intense. The prognathism is reduced, and even the way they handle themselves, because they've got no, quadrupedality ingrained quite yet. So when you sit them up on their hind feet, all of a sudden it just
only later on that they're specializing in the species to a specialized environment. So you can easily imagine that if you have a thing that is farther back before those specializations came in, how many different directions can they go off to? And even down to the robust Australopithecines versus the gracile ones.
Right. My professor, my human evolution professor, showed this. I remember this part of the lecture very well because it stuck with me. So we were beginning to work into genus Homo, and he puts two pictures up on the screen on the projector, and they're two X-rays of hands. And one has the classic curved fingers that allow many of our hominoid relatives to hang, and in the case of gibbons, brachiate, but certainly to be out and about in trees. And then the other one was a straight, quite regular looking phalanges. And he was like, all right, which is the human, which is the chimp? And, the second that you hear that, you're like, this is a trick question. Because what he's going to tell us is that the curved fingers belong to a human and the straight fingers belong to a chimp. And indeed, that was the case. And he said, here's the situation here. We have a chimpanzee that's been raised with a concrete floor cage that's never used its fingers to hang or move about through the tree at all. And then on the other side, you have a human gymnast, and so you've got this really cool plasticity just even in the morphology of the bones. And I was like, wow.
I think it's funky that now I notice that nobody giggles about the genus Homo. Whereas from my generation, there was a thing. So actually, it just sort of slides right past him. I don't see anybody going. Oh.
Actually,
anyway.
So RJ and Erika, are you familiar with the Ali G show?
No.
So I don't know if you know.
Oh yeah, isn't that the guy that also did he's branched out and has been in a bunch of stuff?
Yeah,
he did a Bruno and all that.
Borat. Yeah, he did Bruno, Borat, and The Dictator. Those were the films.
Talented but annoying fellow.
Yeah, so he So the Ali G show was his initial foray into, on-screen entertainment, as far as I know. And basically he put on this sort of like rapper gangster kind of persona, and he would have people on for ostensibly serious interviews, but they were just full of trolling.
And then
he did one with Kent Hovins.
It was daring and vicious.
I was alerted yesterday that he did one with Kent Hovins, and it was hilarious. And one of the things that came up was that someone had said, Homo sapiens, and he was like, "Oh, hold on, I'm not one of those. You might be. I don't know. It's okay if you are, but I'm not. I just want to let everyone know." and I just want to add also, we have Call Me Emo in here, who I'm trying to unmute you and it's not working. Call Me Emo. I don't know if maybe you're muted on your end.
Oh yeah, Emo was in the live chat.
He got him.
Yeah, I've got a few questions here, actually. The first is from Vandalia.
Okay.
Question for Erika. In the debate, you mentioned sexual selection. I was wondering if, in your field of primates, clades, which side has more sexual selection pressure that you know of, males or females?
Females, bar none. Females select for almost anything. That's why in every cercopithecid, so a lot of your ground apes, baboons and macaques especially, you see males being much larger than females, and also typically having much larger canines. And that's because females are obviously going to select for the male, right, that is capable of sort of protecting the most females, so to speak. The old terminology was a harem, but now we typically just, particularly with baboons, it might be sometimes they're actually called like hordes or clans, which I quite like that a bit. But interestingly enough, there is quite a bit of tension when that occurs, depending on the species. Like hamadryas baboons are the exception to the rule. But for the most part, despite the males being quite a bit larger than the females and having those canines in the baboons, less so in the macaques, because they're female philopatric, the females can still kind of gang up and oust the male in many of those species if they decide that he's not doing a good enough job. Particularly, this is the case with gelada baboons, so that they're epithecids. But
bring home the bacon, or all of your collection of wives will get rid of you.
No, exactly. I mean, and that's the thing. But the very interesting thing is, despite the fact that females are indirectly driving sexual dimorphism and sexual selection through male competition, so that would be your intersexual competition, there's been some very interesting studies on sort of sneakier, lower level males in the hierarchy that are almost as successful as the main priority males in certain members of the ground.
Waiting to slip in while dominant is away and all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
they're quite sneaky. And in gelada, there's a funny video on YouTube that's like gelada or baboon king finds out he's been cheated on and essentially very anthropomorphized. But
why aren't they the subject of a reality TV show?
well, I've been waiting for
that's another
this only demonstrates
history here. Darwin came up with that sexual selection idea, which Wallace didn't like at all, and then it kind of fell into dormancy, but really from the 1970s on began to kick back into the science field, and now it's just a hot topic issue. So absolutely nobody argues that in fact you've got a bunch of different selection. You got natural selection and sexual selection. They're two complementary and sometimes conflicting dynamics.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, when in the sort of the Q&A at the end, like, why do males in so many different species have what seems to be very negative kind of drags on their fitness, be it coloration or ornaments or whatever? I mean, you certainly don't want to be a male red deer during rutting season and you're having to clank your antlers together and they get in the way when you're trying to run away from predators and aren't used as armaments all that often. And the answer is because the ladies like it, I mean, and in a very select few species, you see the opposite. It's much less common, but sometimes the males are the choosy ones. There are a couple of birds that are very.
Yeah, I think Gman was trying to hope that the origin of sex was some insoluble mystery. But there's been an awful lot of work on that. And I did an evolution hour on it, that it's related to cell adhesion mechanisms and parasite evasion mechanisms in early multicellular organisms. Matt Herron's done a bunch of stuff on that kind of thing with Volvox. And so that the differentiation into multiple sex modes, we're boring as vertebrates compared to like fungi that's got like 5 going on.
Yep. Actually,
go ahead, Dapper D.
I had a video about the evolution of sex, and it was about Ian Juby, who had a little quick video about that. That wasn't actually that long ago. He's still technically active, not nearly as much as he was, but his main argument seemed to be that if some mutation changed the shape of the intromittent organ in a male, he would have to find a female with a reproductive organ that would fit that intromittent organ. And I was just thinking, just in your own species, Ian, males have a fairly wide variety of size and shape of intromittent organs. And I've never heard of anyone who was like, oh, you know what? My partner's penis is just too weirdly shaped, so we can't have babies. Like, that's not normally the cause of problems with fertility. It's
have you all read that Dr. Tatiana's sex advice thing? She's it's not under her name. I can't think of her name right off the bat. It's she's a biologist and science writer who wrote this just gobsmackingly hilarious discussion of animal sex, insects, and others from the point of view of like a lovelorn column. So that you would have, it says a letter from someone says, I have sex with my mate, but he keeps the penis in me like for 8 or 12 weeks. Is this unusual? Oh, you must be the particular species of so and so, such and such. That's perfectly normal. The bees with the detachable penises. It is an absolute hoot to read.
My favorite for insects though is the horrifyingness of bedbug sex.
Oh, I was gonna say that actually. Go. I love that.
So female bedbugs have perfectly functional gonopores that would function perfectly well to create internal insemination of their eggs if the male bedbug would bother to use it. They don't. Instead, they stab it traumatically through the abdomen of the female and then inject their sperm through her abdomen, which then fertilizes the eggs, and then they leave. And it's just like, why? I mean, I don't know why, but it's horrifying.
That would have been one for Nephi to wrap his little brain around. What exactly was the design? Was the designer a sadist?
Well, I mean, look, who likes bedbugs?
RJ, obviously that's post-fall. Come on.
Yeah, there we go. The catch-all. And I was surprised that he wouldn't try to do that kind of an argument, because it's the get out of theodicy free card of theology.
Actually, I want to quickly ask Call Me Emo the same question I asked everyone when they came in, which is, in 3 sentences or so, none of which can have more than 3 clauses, what was your initial impression of the Erika versus Gman debate? You're going to have to unmute for that.
Awaken, Emo.
Oh, sorry about that. My bad. Well, G-Man is very difficult to debate. I personally won't waste time doing it, but it's just G-Man. I don't know what to say about it.
No, that's fair enough. G-Man is a firecracker.
Oh yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although there is an echo, is there any chance of you grabbing some headphones? Or yeah, muting works too. Yeah. Erika and I were actually discussing that a couple days ago, weren't we?
We were, I believe.
Yeah, because Erika and I, every once in a while, we chat on Twitter. I don't know, every few days or so, we have a quick little conversation. Yeah. And yeah, I was like, oh, so you're debating G-Man, huh? And actually, I thought it went a lot better than I thought it would. I'll be honest. G-Man impressed me, and
he was on good behavior.
Yeah.
I think he feeds a lot off of, like, he kind of feeds on the energy that the other person is giving. And so before we started, he was like, I'm just gonna warn you, like, I'm going full G-man, and I was like, look,
I don't think he did. Yeah. He said he did, but I don't see it. Like, for me, full G-man is like, a few years ago, where all he can do is just laugh at people and insult them, and then give bald assertions that he then laughs about when you contest.
Yeah.
But that was not at all what happened. And I got to be honest, G-Man went up several notches in my estimation as someone who can have a good conversation. I mean, I don't agree with G-Man. I'm sure he knows that. But I was impressed. And like I said earlier, if you had told me a year ago that I would have Nephilim Free and G-Man on my channel, and that the one that I would have had a much better time talking to with was G-Man, I honestly would have believed you. I wouldn't have believed you. I would have said, no way. That's not possible. But G-Man, if you're watching this sometime in the future, like I've said before, man, I'm impressed. And you know what? Good for you. I think that this will open up an increasing number of people who will want to talk to you about things. And I think having new voices that can have decent conversations, that can have conversations that aren't hard to listen to, that don't just make you anxious, is a good thing for the community. So
I agree. Yeah. Guys, I gotta get out of here. It's
I know. Remember when you said you'd be here for 45 minutes or so?
Yeah, we're amazed you're there that long.
Oh no, we should stay.
Before we go, I wanted to touch on the anatomy thing.
Oh yes, please do.
Right. So basically what they mean by change in anatomy is a change in the number of bones or muscles or organs in an organism. If you listen to them on the podcast, that's what they say. What they believe is that the kind, because you can't add anatomical features, then the anatomical features within a kind must be conserved. So humans and apes, or humans and other apes, would be a different kind because we have a different bone and muscle number count. That's pretty much the argument there. And I did send you guys an email. Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just saying that's really interesting.
Oh, good. So I did send you an email to show you that Raw Matt's making that exact same argument, that all he wants to convince him of evolution is show him some anatomical change, some addition of a rib or a spinal vertebra and so on. And I've demonstrated that, showing that we're able to breed pigs with extra ribs and spinal vertebrae and so on. But the argument itself, if you just look at the organisms within a kind, you would realize that snakes have varying numbers of ribs within the same kind. Bats, the same thing. Even dogs have a different number of bones.
Even humans don't all have the same number of ribs.
Well, and we've got experimental parts
and
on
even
that.
Humans don't have the same
cited
number of
a thing in Slam Dunk about, I think, J-Lo or somebody in there had done some work on that they have these fossils of very early therapsids that are swimmel mode, and they have variations. They were able to identify the gene in the existing animal and finding out the repressor that turns it on or off that will produce the rib characteristics that you find in these fossil examples. They did it by experiment. So I guess that will prove to him that evolution's true, because that's been done.
No, it won't. But I think Call Me Emo wants to go for a little bit more.
All right. They don't believe that could happen. Well, even though it happens, they don't believe it could happen because it would be considered a coordinated change. Because when you add the bone, you need the musculature and the wiring to allow the bone to work, and they don't believe that can happen. So that's the reason why they make the argument. One is because we have a different number of bones with apes and so on, and two, they don't think it can happen, but it does. So that's the whole point of it. And secondly, a kind. I know you guys always ask, what is a kind? What is a kind? What is a kind? A kind is actually a way of measuring biological continuity. So it could be either morphological or molecular, If you read Todd Wood's work, you would find that. So what they would do is to just like how taxonomists would do, they would take the character states and they would put it into a matrix, and then they would measure the morphological continuity between species, and then wherever there's a gap, a considerable gap, that would mark off where one kind begins. The thing about that thing is they don't use it on organisms, large groups of organisms that have very good continuity, like crustaceans. It's a very large group where the collective diversity is very large, but the continuity or the differences between species is very small. So they don't use it on things such as crustaceans, trilobites, things like palm trees and so on, or the entire clade would be included. That's why, for example, when Todd Wood did the analysis on grasses, he included all the grasses. So the bamboo, the corn, your lawn grass, sugarcane, all of them fell within the same grass kind because of the continuity. So all the grasses is a single kind.
What, did a rooster just crow?
Yeah.
I could have sworn I heard a rooster.
He's always leaving out data fields. So we have a whole chapter on baraminology in the Rocks book, and Todd Wood gets raked over the coals because you can literally see him flushing data down the stream with the bats. God. Out of 20 bat families, he only dealt with 2 and very specialized. And in one case, he literally said, "Oh, I'm not going to pay any attention to any of the genetic data."
Oh, okay.
So they trim.
Hold up a second, guys. Hold up 1 second. I want to let Erika get out of here because after having said, "Oh, maybe I'll be here for 45 minutes," she's been here like 3 times or 3.5 times as long as that.
I can't help it. I just love the conversation.
Oh, I do too. And like I said last time we chatted, I didn't realize up until that point how much not having chats like this was starting to bug me. So
I did a meme.
Yes, I will put that up right after Erika gets out of here. Erika, shoot me a message about. So we're doing a little collaboration video. It's going to be pretty short.
Yeah, I will.
Shoot me a message about the date and time because in our script we have a little just in brackets date and time.
Yeah, sure.
We need to figure which date and time we're going to use before you record.
Perfect. Yeah. So, yeah. With you. Sounds good.
Yes, shoot me a message tomorrow when you wake up.
And remember, you have a standing invite to be on every you wish.
Uh-oh.
I know, and I keep every Wednesday, like I'll always remember Evolution Hour, and it'll be like Thursday afternoon. And then damn it.
Not even I have that. Man, I'm so jealous.
I know. This next Wednesday, it's gonna tell
You're a delight. We have fun talking about stuff.
No, we do. Pester Jackson and tell him to pester me about it on Twitter.
Yeah.
Or just post me on Twitter.
Erika, I have only one thing. People are active in the fan Discord.
Are you on the fan Discord for Dapper Dino?
Yes,
yeah, she is.
Okay. Yeah, be there more. Say things.
Yes, I should do that more.
Yeah, the speculative evolution discussion is been a bit slow because submissions have not been as common recently, but it's still active.
I'm not too worried about that. There's probably 30 or 40 submissions that I haven't even gotten to. So
you might be done by the end of the year.
Basically. Well, so this, Erika, you don't need to be here for this. So you can take off. This is just for the channel stuff. So I'll see you later. I'll talk to you probably tomorrow, hopefully.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Take care there, kid.
All right.
I will try my best.
Stay safe. All right. So about the speculative evolution thing. So we currently have enough new submissions for phase 2 that I'm going to be making a phase 2 update on the speculative evolution, which I don't know. RJ and Emo, call me Emo. I'm not sure if you are familiar with my new speculative evolution project. It's for fun.
Oh yeah, the idea of working out future evolution of particular animals and stuff, and it has to make sense biologically, right?
Right. So that's
a really handy thought experiment.
It is, and we're having fun with it. And I am sometimes asking people to make various corrections or to justify their particular creatures that they're submitting. But it's a collaborative thing. And I currently have enough new creatures for phase 2 that I'm going to make an update to go over the creatures that we've already had submitted that I haven't gone over before. And that should be coming out either on the 8th or the 11th. I'm not positive. But whichever one it comes out on, the week after that. So I'll give you 1 week from that point to still submit things for phase 2. And then that's it for submissions for phase 2. Anything that I get after that 1 week after date, the answer is an automatic no. And what I will do at that point is I will go through and I will see, are there any obvious niches that we haven't filled? And if there are, myself and a select fairly small group of people, one of whom happens to be Erika, will be able to kind of fill those out with some, discussion back and forth and stuff. But right now we have a lot of really cool creatures for phase 2. Really some very creative and very plausible evolutions of the phase 1 creatures.
Yeah, Google Dixon did a bunch of stuff on that.
He did, yeah.
Read his, yeah.
I'm actually probably going to start doing a few more videos, for one thing, because they do a lot better in the algorithm than most of my videos, about some other speculative evolution projects. So I'm thinking about doing some stuff about Sniad, the Nereus project, Darwin 4 from Dougal Dixon. I think it was Dougal Dixon who did Darwin 4. Maybe not, though. No, it was Wayne Barlow who did Darwin 4. I'm going to think about doing some of the new dinosaurs or After Man or Man After Man from Dougal Dixon. So that's stuff that's probably coming up.
I have to ask, are any of the submissions so far resembling a crocoduck?
No, but we do
actually. Oh, darn.
So actually, I'm just going to pull up the page, because there's this website called World Animal, which is for people who are doing world building stuff.
Yeah. I posted it in the live chat and in the private chat. And
so I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna do a little preview here. So give me a second. I'm gonna screen share. And
I'll ask another. Are there any hexapodal vertebrates in the mix?
There are no vertebrates at all so far.
This is
okay.
Completely alien.
Yeah, so we're starting with a brand new biosphere.
Got a question.
Okay, got a question.
From Ugly German Truths, did you involve a geophysicist in your world building? The constellation of the continent seems problematic as the ice vast unobstructed. There is a vast unobstructed space for the oceans to flow and build up.
Yeah, so this world, I did not specifically consult a geophysicist, mostly because this is primarily about the biology, but I am trying to keep the geophysics reasonable. But this is a little bit of a spoiler. These continental areas that you can see up here are moving towards each other, towards a future supercontinent, which will later break up in the history of this planet. So we're just going to go to this phase 2 thing here, and we're just going to take a quick look at some of the stuff that hasn't been featured in a video yet. So we've got...
I'm totally not biased, but you should pick Iprezi? I think that'd be a good one.
We'll go through a few. So we've got this is a photosynthetic organism.
Planet of plastic lollipops.
Well, so this is a photosynthetic organism that has a purple... actually 2 different purple pigments that both capture light from the parent star to turn into sugar. Let's see what else we got.
I take it they're sessile.
They are sessile, yes. We actually have some non-sessile photosynthetic creatures, though. We'll get to some.
Yeah, that's another interesting thing. Can one have a non-sessile plant?
Well, there are non-sessile photosynthetic organisms on Earth. There are actually some animals that capture algal cells on Earth and get sugar from them as a supplement to their dietary needs, and they are not sessile. So even Earth has non-sessile, more or less photosynthetic organism. But we have this proto-Mystanidae.
Really threw me off because I thought when you posted that up on Twitter, I thought you were alluding to an actual Cambrian animal of some sort that had newly been found. And so I tried to Google it and found nothing. So you little sneak,
Sorry about that. This is a fictional organism, which actually I like the design. I had a lot of fun making this. So all these 3D renders that you're seeing.
Hypothetical.
Actually,
I guess that then it dawned on me.
RJ, how big do you think that is?
Oh, well, I'm inclined to think maybe a few inches to a foot.
That's what I thought initially when I saw the design. It's actually about 1/4 of a centimeter. It's tiny.
Oh, little itty bitty, tiny little cute little thing.
The problem that
like
I have,
kind of rink.
Right. The problem I have with the render though is that they're so tiny, but they're pelagic that I can't easily include anything for scale. Because my goal with these renders is to make them look like pictures that you might have been able to take on the planet, right? Like if you had been there 470 million years ago with a tiny little camera, you could have captured this scene maybe. But it's hard to do that.
Yeah, that's why I think partly creationists get into terrible trouble because they may look at renderings of things and not quite think about what scale it is, and look at the blood vessels and crap in stuff that's supposedly found, and they don't check to see it's in nanometers.
Yeah. And here we've got something that is functionally sort of like a cross between a jellyfish and a squid, except it has armor plating and horrible spines.
Made of keratin?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the probes that were attacking the ice planet on Hoth.
It does actually kind of look like that, doesn't it? But these are actually we have one guy, Phage, and you can actually see creature designed by Phage down here. And he submitted a phase 1 organism called a filter globe because it was a filter feeding thing. It had this buoyant organ like a swim bladder in the sort of top part of its mantle. And he's been going to town coming up with really interesting radiations from this particular organism. So it's been really cool there.
Yeah, it's an interesting theoretical matter about what is the range of living organism possibilities with alien biologies or otherwise. What is anything possible? And if so, under what circumstances? So it's actually a scientifically really interesting problem.
It is. And actually, I'll show it after this creature that we have up here. I actually have some fairly so I have definitions for like what the planet is like and what its host star is like and what its moon is like, and we'll go into that in a little bit. But we got this fairly large for the time herbivore. You can see it going after some of the plants that we had on earlier. And it kind of looks like a beetle until you look too close. And then you realize, oh, this is actually very little like a beetle. It might have some similar kind of habits, but not really. And of course, everything on the world
are they thinking in terms of the genetics? Is it DNA-based organisms, or is it not done at that level?
It is DNA-based organisms, but because I don't think most of the people, even including myself, who would like to contribute, are going to have that kind of detailed knowledge. I'm not going too much into the genetics of these organisms. Although, if anyone else is out there, and there's we're still taking submissions, and you want to go take a deep dive into the genetics, I might pass that information on to someone else, but I'm open to you doing that. And I actually we'll go into here's something by Erika.
In principle, you could theoretically retro-engineer organisms based on DNA as we know, and think about what the design space is that people 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now may be able to do these things in an experimental way, at least in silico, that are way more advanced and actually based on genetics.
That would be cool. And it would also take some of the pressure off of me, because currently I'm trying to make all of these in 3D as 3D models, and it's not easy. Because this is the submission down here that I got from Erika for this organism,
and turned it into something neat, like it's coming out of the picture.
Yeah, and I turned it into this guy up top here, which I think matches reasonably well.
Oh yeah,
I think I saw that on an old episode of A Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
Oh yeah,
so it was attacking somebody.
This is actually a non-sessile, although it's slow moving, but it's a non-sessile photosynthetic creature, and it actually gets supplemental nutrients via external digestion of things that it catches on its little tentacles that you can see here in this little feeding section. That has been featured before, though. So I said I would go into the planet. So like we have all this Here's a quick little render I made based on that map that I have of what it might look like from space. And then we have all this data, like you might find on like, you know, a Wikipedia page or something. We have the semi-major axis, orbital eccentricity, year length, mean orbital velocity, orbital inclination, axial tilt, mass, radius, circumference, mean density.
Well, climatologists could be dragged into it because and ocean current people, because theoretically there would be currents that would or would not be running around continental masses, and then there would be wind patterns off a mountain range. See how complicated this shit gets in a hurry?
It is. And actually, in the next phase, I'm going to be uploading more maps that will get into currents and wind patterns. Because the next phase, I'm going to start allowing people to make organisms that can survive in intertidal zones and maybe just above intertidal zones. So we're going to be getting into the initial colonization of land.
Basic things, yeah.
Right, yeah. Because right now everything is fully aquatic. Nothing really lives in the tidal zones except maybe in the closest to the non-tidal areas. You know, like maybe things that can be exposed for, you know, a few hours. But yeah, I mean, I even decided to work out the hill sphere. I made sure to work out the hill sphere for this planet. So yeah, there's a lot of there's a fair bit of detail that you can sink in your teeth into here if you really want to. And like I defined the moon, right? Like this is the moon that circles the planet that gives it its tides. And I also this isn't something that's currently at the phase we're at, but eventually once we get up to, you know, current day in the setting, there's even going to be a little human research colony there. And this is a picture of it that I made, because why wouldn't I
Don't forget a Starbucks.
Yeah, but why wouldn't I spend hours trying to make a great space station thing, complete with labels and then lights and docking rings and solar panels?
Yeah, it's a fascinating science applied issue in the same way that I mentioned on my own show about the what if game issue that you do in history. And there's no better application of the applied understanding, either what you know or what you don't know, is when you try to create an artificial organism or an alternate timeline history.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And here we have another organism, and you can see that it,
wiggly.
Yeah, but you can also tell it's closely related to another organism we had on. The purple one that was wandering around chomping on the plants, but this is actually an ectoparasite that clamps on to various photosynthetic organisms, and it sucks the juice out of them. And actually, if I go back to the earlier one, so if I go back to Durospina, which is the other organism it's closely related to, let's go into the full view here. Can I? That's too big. If you look in the lower right, you can actually, right around here, you can actually see another one of those organisms we just showed, which is actually a different subspecies, and it's attached to this organism here.
Right.
So I like to put in little
you
Easter
can
eggs
easily
like
do
that.
because they have specialized ecological niches. Are the eyes symmetrical? Are there two on the other side? I'm assuming those little buttons are eyes.
Yes, though there are two other eyes on the other side. So I can show you the sort of basal segmented organism.
Yeah.
So give me
what's
a
the little
second
stripes
here.
on the side behind that?
I'll
Is that
explain if you would like me to,
sexual
Jasper.
display or
a little bit here.
sensory?
Hold on. There was too much crosstalk.
Sorry.
RJ, what was your question?
Oh, the stripes along its body, are those just sexual decoration, or do they have sensory function?
Neither, actually. Those are respiratory organs.
Ooh, that's where they little breathe.
Yep. So there are folds that are hard to see because
or
they're
is
very
this above?
thin.
Is this above water?
No, this is underwater. So those are gills.
Underwater, okay. Gills
Yeah.
type.
So those are gills.
You're gonna have things with biramous appendages.
I currently don't, but I do have something. If I go to phase 1, that probably could. So this here is sort of our
the biramous appendage affirmation league is going to be complaining about that if you don't.
Well, they can complain. This is our basal most segmented organism. This is the most primitive segmented organism, and we've got we've got ventral eyes on every segment. We've got little propulsive appendages on every segment, and then there are ventral gills. So these are gill fronds on the bottom here. And so the thing that the previous organism evolved from is a little bit more derived, but it existed at the same time as that guy that I just showed you, and it is where'd it go?
You realize that organism may have been Ian Juby in its estivating state.
This is the thing that turned into those little beetle-like creatures, and it has its respiratory organs sort of on the posterior end, but they've sort of migrated as they've needed to get
like
more
a little
efficient.
glove.
Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, in case anyone is wondering, first, I did not come up with this creature. And also, if you think that it is identical to a speculative evolution creature created by Bibluridian, it's because you haven't paid attention. That has come up a surprising amount about this. It was like, oh, did you just rip this off from Bibluridian? First, even if it was
convergence.
Yeah, first, even if I was the one who ripped it off from Bibluridian, first, even if it was ripped off from Bibluridian, it wasn't me. Second, the only reason you think this is identical to his organism is because you just aren't looking at it closely. It does vaguely resemble it, but when you're looking at the basalmost organisms in any starting speculative evolution project, there's only so many ways you can arrange things. Like, people are like, oh, your radial sessile filter feeders from phase 1. I'll find them here. Let's see. These guys, oh, they look so much like all these other radial sessile filter feeders. It's like, yeah, because if you're looking at the base of radial filter feeders with the most primitive imaginable anatomy, there's only so many things you can do. Like, what do you want from me? Like, it has to make sense, right? And I like these guys. I'm actually going to be doing some more stuff with them because no one else is, so I'm going to do stuff with them.
Oh, do go for that.
Yeah.
Put 5 or 6 of them in a little kick line and have a little song.
Do you want to bring up the cladistic chart, or shall I?
I should be able to grab that.
Which has been one of the things I've been doing, which is making charts for all of these.
Yes, TD Lane, with my advice, has been making up little cladistic charts. And so this is the phase 1 cladistic chart. I have not uploaded the phase 2 one yet. That probably won't come until the end of the phase, just so that way we have every available taxon in here. But yeah, all of these tips that you can see all along here, they all have examples of organisms that are in there. And we thought very carefully about how to make sure that they all fit in there, and they all worked. So we got lots of cool stuff. So which one haven't we seen yet? We seen Minos. Yeah, we saw that one. We've got these guys here who are their ancestors were photosynthetic, but they have turned to chemosynthesis. Let's see. Here are some more non-sessile photosynthetic organisms. And they actually use those anterior projections to filter feed. It's hard to see, but there are actually little hairs that go between them. And they gain extra nutrients and extra chemicals that they need to build their various proteins and whatnot by feeding on some plankton as they swim through the ocean. And then these big vertical projections are there to add, so they can photosynthesize sugars. And so if you notice, we have 2 different sets of pigments doing photosynthesis, and that's so that there's limited competition between them. So let's see.
Presumably accessing different wavelengths of light, possibly.
Exactly, right. Exactly.
Oh, look, a cute little critter.
I know, it's adorable. I've had a few people say, oh, it kind of looks like a Pokemon. I'm like, yeah, it does actually kind of look like a Pokemon.
Yeah. Until it takes out its vicious teeth and rips your heart out.
Well, no, it's only 1.85 inches or 4.7 centimeters, which actually makes it a whole lot bigger than the first thing I showed.
Tiny little rip out.
Hey, I made this.
Yeah.
It's so cute.
It is absurdly cute. And it looks much smaller than the first thing I showed, even though it's actually much bigger. And I don't really have a good way to compare them. I'm thinking about doing some kind of scene where I put all the creatures to scale in the same scene and sort of zoom through them at the very end of this phase.
Yeah, if you have access to a 3D printer, then you make up and you sell these as part of the action figure set.
Do feel free to do that.
That would be cool. This is another photosynthetic thing. It grows kind of like a lichen, and
which is based off of Yoneno. That is how it's pronounced.
Is it
Yoneno or Jodeno? Either one works for me. Which is something I designed in phase 1.
And this is well, I mean, it's up to you how it's pronounced ultimately if you designed it.
Yeah.
So this is another thing that's related to that. You can tell it has the same coloration, the same kind of adhering to surfaces, and the same sort of reproductive structure, which is what you're seeing here. But I also tossed in some other organisms from the same phase. So we've got those little mushroom plant things, and we've got the big beetle-like thing, and that cute little 3-segmented thing from earlier. So yeah, this is a quick little preview. I'm going to actually go through all this text on the next video, but that is the current state of the Speculative Evolution project. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I haven't been too active on it the last couple days because I'm trying to get my new credit scene for my patrons out so that I have an updated list of patrons. Also, I have my first $50 patron, and $50 patrons get to tell me what to do at least once, which means, sorry. So I'm going to be having a very unusual video coming out soon, which will actually be an examination of the linguistic inaccuracies of the Star Trek The Next Generation episode Darmok.
This is peak nerd, and I love it.
Yes, so that's going to happen.
Yes, my God.
RJ, or anyone who's here, are any of you familiar with the episode Darmok?
I will need to watch it beforehand.
I'm not sure. Was that the one where Picard's translator wasn't working?
Yes. Yeah, and he...
Oh, okay, yeah. In fact, I've drawn a lot of issues about that. The fascinating bit of how a language structure could be constructed in a way that wasn't conventionally grammatical.
Right. Well, actually, it turns out there are ways that you can construct a language that is at least as unambiguous as human languages, but that could not be interpreted in real time by humans, at least in any sufficiently long utterance. So I've actually encountered examples of people who have designed grammatical systems that humans could not interpret in real time given a reasonably lengthy discourse. Darmok does a really bad job of this, and I'm not going to get into it too much because that would be spoilers for the video. But Bent Hovind, who is currently a high enough tier patron on Patreon to request a video, has requested it, and I've said, okay. So look forward to some diving into some linguistics, which normally doesn't have on the channel.
A geek out show.
I know, seriously. And actually so I have every once in a while touched a little bit on linguistics on my channel before, but usually in the context of Kent Hovind saying something stupid about languages. Because
I think we already know an example of a totally incomprehensible language structure. The President of the United States uses that.
Fair enough. But oddly enough, Kent Hovind will every once in a while say, well, if you check the original whatever in this text, you'll see this. And every single time that he's done that so far, guess who's been able to know enough, or guess who's known enough of that language to be able to fact check him on it by looking at the original text? Yeah, me, because I know enough Hebrew and Greek and surprisingly enough, Old English to be able to just pull up the original text, put it on screen, and check him.
Oh, dear.
Well, even Answers in Genesis, their Bible geeks have said they don't regard him as reliable on the scripture stuff.
He's not even reliable on Beowulf.
Yes, the reptile Beowulf.
So, have I told you about his claims about Beowulf?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I do remember.
Call me Emo. Have I told you about that? You're still muted.
We can
I haven't heard about that yet.
You haven't heard? You have not heard about that?
Oh, sorry about that.
You have not heard about that?
Oh,
no,
I gotta leave, kids. So
okay, well, bye,
let
RJ.
you go on that.
All right. I'll tell this story real quick, and I think we're actually going to shut down. It's been almost 3 hours. It's longer than I usually go, and we're dwindling in viewership. So I'll tell the story real quick. So Kent Hovind has this talking point where he says that, if you read the original Old English, then Beowulf is described as a creature like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And I'm thinking to myself, well, when I took Old English in college, which I did do, Beowulf was a big focus on what we use for translation because it's one of the longest continuous texts in Old English that are available. And it's also one of the only ones that has a plot that's that long. So, it's handy for that reason. And I don't remember Beowulf being described in Old English in any particular way that was very significant in terms of what he actually looked like. It seemed very ambiguous. So I went and I found the one passage where really any background information about Grendel is described, to see if Grendel is described in a way that would be commensurate with a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And so I started reading it, and this was actually live on stream that I did this. And it says that he was a descendant of Cain. And so I said, okay, well, is this the Cain from the Bible? And so it says, after that, the next clause is, what was it? Oh, yeah. Thirtha Abel Sloch, which is Old English for the one who killed Abel. So Grendel is described as a descendant of Cain from the Bible. And unless Cain was a Tyrannosaurus Rex in the Bible, and, Eve gave birth to a Tyrannosaurus Rex somehow, I don't think that Beowulf describes Grendel as a Tyrannosaurus Rex. I don't buy it. So...
Yeah. That was in your debate with Hovind, wasn't it?
I don't think it came up in the debate, because I don't see how it would have come up in the... Like, I'm trying to remember back, and I don't see it there. It
must be one of the Kents with Bents.
Mm-hmm.
You guess you'll have to watch them all to find which one was.
Yeah, so if you're curious, watch all of the Kents with Bent in chronological order right now.
Don't drink alcohol, you will die.
Yeah, I do not recommend you follow my drinking rules, which actually have only been established in the last few. Kent with Bent 20... Actually, you know what? It's a good time to get into channel news. So let's see. Exactly what comes out... So, all right. Let me back up a little bit. Tuesday is going to be the next Kent with Bent 22. I'm thinking about calling it Kent with Bent 22. We're going to base it on one of the Endgame Infinity War movies as far as the title goes. I'm not sure which one I'm going to go with. It might be like Kent Wars or Kent Game or something. I'm not really sure. I'm working on a thumbnail for it that is actually pretty amusing.
Kent of the North Star.
Well, Kent
I will always stick by that.
Kent is Thanos in the thumbnail, and Bent Hovind is going to be Thor. So that'll be amusing. So what exactly comes out on Wednesday will depend on whether or not Erika gets me her part of our collaboration video by then. If she does, then it will probably be our announcement about the Kent Hovind debate situation. Because she's going to get me her half of that. I'm going to do my half, and then we're going to put that out. If she doesn't get that to me by Wednesday, or really by Tuesday, it will probably just be the next episode of the Noah's Ark series. So Noah's Zookeeper. And if Thursday is Noah's Zookeeper, then Saturday will probably be the thing with Erika. So there you go. And if Thursday turns out to be the thing with Erika, then Saturday will probably be the next episode of Noah's Zookeeper. I'm working on a few new videos that aren't part of a series. One of them is actually warning you guys about a scammer who has been scamming people in various nerd and paleontology type communities. So like various like sci-fi, fantasy, pop culture stuff, as well as paleontology groups. This guy has been scamming people for years, and I'm doing a little bit of an expose. So yeah, stay tuned for that. I'm going to be doing a little expose there. I'm also going to be doing a FAQ because with the ridiculous influx of new subscribers recently, I've been getting a lot of new questions that are not necessarily new, but a lot of questions have been repeated many times. So look out for a Q&A video, or not really, it's more of an FAQ video where I go through things that people have asked me a bunch and I just answer them. So there's questions like, how did you make the avatar? What's the species of dinosaur? Why did you start the channel? Did you buy any of the assets that you use in your scenes? Just a whole bunch of stuff that have been asked more than once, or that I thought were asked only a few times, but were significant enough questions that I would toss them in there. That's coming at some point. I am also working on a new debunk series from a creationist that I just found out about a little while ago. Actually, oddly enough, from Kent Hovind's secretary, who included a link to one of his podcasts in an email she sent me. So that was a little odd, but I appreciate it. He actually seems like a really nice guy, really personal guy. I would like to have him on the channel sometime. But his name is, or what he goes by on YouTube is In His Image. So that will come out. That will start coming out after the Noah Zookeeper thing. I think that's basically it. I'm still considering what my next episode of things that aren't dinosaurs is going to be. I've had a lot of interesting suggestions. Gorgonopsids are on the table. Mosasaurs are on the table. Some dinosauromorphs or dinosauriformes are on the table. Those are all suggestions I've had. So I'm gonna see about it. I'm not sure, but I think that is it for channel news. TD Lane, do you have anything to plug or talk about, or any final words like that? Go ahead.
Oh, a few things. First, Archosaurs would definitely be good for things that aren't dinosaurs.
Yes.
Therapsids would be good. Like Organopsids. Yeah, I do think Mosasaurs should be the next one. Another thing on my creature you showed, Iprezi, which I think is how it's pronounced, because the name is literally the Belgian city of Ypres, with an I on the end.
Well, okay.
Yeah, and the second thing is actually heavy inspiration for this were annelid worms, which is the first part of the name. Okay. And then I just put Poda on it on the end because, hey, it's got legs and it's got these fleshy arm mandibles that are honestly the weirdest part of it to me. I'll bit arthropod-like. I'll just put Poda on the end.
Okay.
Fun fact.
Call me Emo. What do you got for us before we head out of here?
Maybe a tip would be when it comes to debating creations and so on, it is cool, like to try to go over, teach evolution, try to summarize it in your opening. But I think it's kind of a waste of time when in a debate. I think we should leave the teaching evolution or the evolution 101 for, when you're doing your channel stuff, when we're doing our channel stuff. But when in a debate, I think most of the time should be spent dealing with the creationist arguments. Because what would happen is they would come and they would make like a dozen arguments in their opening. And we don't get to, I don't see them being addressed during the discussion portion of the debate. And then they're just left hanging. And, like Senator True would come on and would make, he has this kind of script opening thing. And he would make like 10 arguments. And at the end of the debate, you address 4 or 5 of them. And then you have 5 of them just hanging there. And then, he goes off and no one, in this kind of way, like, no one addresses the argument. But you didn't have time to do it because 1, well, there isn't enough time. And 2, a lot of the time was spent trying to, summarize evolution somewhat in a 10-minute opening, which I think doesn't make sense. Evolution can't be summarized within a 10-minute opening. It doesn't do any justice trying to summarize evolution that way. So I guess the bulk of the effort should be focused on dealing with the creationist argument as they propose it.
Okay. Well, there you go. That is it for tonight. Sorry, T Lane. That's it. No.
Thanks.
Oh, fine. One quick thing.
When will you start your Slanesh cult? You know, the pressing. Heresy!
Yeah, no Slanesh cults here. No Slanesh cults. If I was going to start a cult to a chaos god, wouldn't be Slanesh. I'll leave it up to your imagination which of the others it would be. But I have had a chaos army, and it was primarily dedicated to one of the chaos gods, and it wasn't Slanesh. Actually, I don't think I had any Slanesh units. I had a Bloodthirster, which was my only Cornate unit. So there you go.
Sphincter of Doom says, Homan never met a Gish he couldn't gallop.
Thank you. And by the way, Sphincter of Doom, where were you when I needed my chemical engineer friend? Not here, so we're no longer friends. No, that's not true. Yeah, Sphincter of Doom is, in fact, the chemical engineer friend I would have had on had he been around, but he wasn't, so take that. All right, well, thank you very much. Thanks to everyone who super chatted. I'm going to read off your names again, just in case anyone didn't get it. We got Brian Stevens, Eric Viertaler, Z Leaping Bear, David Baldock, Ian Chen, and I think that is it. Several of you super chatted several times. Thank you very much for your generous super chats and your excellent comments and questions. Thank you everybody who showed up and watched. I appreciate it. At peak, I think we had about 70 or so people, which is pretty good for my channel. Also, yeah, during the course of this, I have received, I'm going to double check, but yeah, over the course of this, I've had about 20 or so subscribers. So yeah, it's been a fun stream, a successful stream. I am going to be asking Gustick Gibbon if she would like some portion of the super chats, since some of the super chats were directed towards her. And if she does, I will go through and say, do you want half? And if she doesn't, then I'm just going to keep the money because I want money. I'm sorry. Money. What can I say? Yeah, what can I say? But have a good night. Enjoy whatever it is you're doing for the rest of the night. Stay safe. I really
sleeping.
Mean that.
Sleeping. I'm going to bed after this.
Yeah. Really stay safe. Stay home if you can. If you can't, be careful. I actually brought my gas mask inside from my car today. So I'm going to clean it up a little bit, and I might actually end up wearing it out if I have to go out. So have a good night.
Shit, you should Creek cosplay.
You never know. All right. Well, I'm the Diaper Dinosaur. I'll talk to you next time.